Yeah, I will do that because he didn't know for how long he would be on the ER. You know how long you have to wait in the ER? Hours.
Yes, yes. That's a fact. That's a real test of your patience, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Hey, KP Heathen, good to see you.
Hi,
Hello,
guys.
Alan. Good morning. Good morning from Seattle, Washington here.
Almost off
evening.
grid, Grandma. Good to see you, Krista.
Hey, Alan.
Hi, Chef.
Good to see you, Alan.
How you doing,
That's right.
Charlie?
I keep forgetting it's evening for you guys over there. For me, it's middle of the day. That's why
Yeah,
I'm trying to get
it's 7 p.m. in the UK.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it's
2
11
o'clock
a.m.
here p.m. and it's 11 a.m. by Bob. So we're
Right.
going over the
Still
friggin'
morning
map here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today's topic is a topic probably everyone of you would like. Protecting your preps before, during, and after an event.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. If it's, I'll see if I can present what I've done. You know, I'm in my garage and I've got machine tools and all that. Let's see if I can find that video. I can weld all that stuff, and I really recommend all preppers learn how to weld. You will not regret it, you know. But
Nope. Even if you don't have a welder, you won't regret it.
that's a fact. That is a fact because they are. You can get them a pretty affordable Chinese ones that work. Here we
Good
go.
evening, Girl of Survival. Good to see you.
This I'll present this if it's all right, Shadow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna turn the volume down, but I made this a few years ago for the storing of my canned goods. Made out of bed frames I got from charity shops and old tools that I don't use anymore, and welded everything together in a hodgepodge. But
You kill me when I see tools welded up, especially that freaking 1.25 inch crow's foot I just saw there on the right.
yeah.
Yeah, that
Well,
one. You're
back when I
killing me
was
with that one.
when I was a heavy equipment mechanic, and you know, I used it all the time. But like, dude, I'm retired now, and none of my kids are mechanics, so it's like, you know.
Welcome, Prepper for the Ages.
That's
Yeah.
like a piece of modern art.
Yeah, it kind of
Yeah.
is kind of a little glimpse into my diseased, poisoned mind, you know. But the frame is made out of used bed frames, and here's the top. And don't underestimate how strong your stainless steel cooking ware is. You know, I bought tons of spoons and stuff like that, welded it all together. And the locks are placed so that you can't just strike the locks with a hammer. You know, they're shielded. So, yeah. There we go. That's one way that I protect my canned goods.
Is that? No, it's not. I know what you made that for. Don't lie to me. That's
What's that?
That's for catching that damn raccoon that keeps popping into your backyard.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm not. Oh, you got to check this girl's channel out. Oh,
Hey,
I'm
Sissy
sorry,
Bell
Shadow, but
Prepping. Good to see you, man.
the dirty old man in me comes out. This is a Korean chick, and she's obviously a model. She is a model, and all of her camping stuff that she sets up is all brand new. I'm sure it's all sponsored, but oh my, I would go camping with that little Korean chick any day.
Of course you would.
All right.
Those are the only kind of camping channels that have millions of views.
Oh yeah,
Almost off
that's a
grid,
fact.
Grandma.
The prepper campers, we don't get shit. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
Alla inte hennes
gotta have
we have less stress over it. We don't have to worry about doing things just right to get 8 million views. We just have fun.
Yeah. All the stuff on her channel is all brand new. She's sponsored by someone, but yeah, she is extremely Asian yummy. But
I love it that way.
all done.
Yeah.
But that cage I just showed you, I've made several of those for food and other items that are necessary for a preparedness situation. And just keep in mind that anything can be breached, but the purpose of making cages for some of my prepping gear is to slow them down, make them regret, when they're going to spend 3 hours trying to break into one of my cages full of food when they could go right next door and grab it off the shelves. Hey, KP.
Yeah, I think the sort of the diversification of where you store your preps is probably a good first step as well, rather than having everything in just one place. If you haven't got like a purpose-built cage like that, if you've got a variety of preps, you can put some in your car, you can put a little in your pantry, you can put some in a garage, you put some in a friend's house, or you can do what I do, which is caches. I have outdoor caches. The vast majority of what I would consider to be preps are outdoor caches. So, I don't have a huge store of food at home. I'm not that, like I keep saying, I'm not really a prepper, so I don't have huge caches of items in one location, really. I did see something interesting about tin cans the other day, though. It's like I've got a couple of these small can holders where you load them from the top, and then you take one and it sort of rolls down.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah.
It's a rotational can holder for restaurants use them.
Yeah. So you're not always taking from the front of your preps, and the stuff at the back is going out of date. And I've seen I haven't got the picture of it, but I've seen somebody who'd basically built a wardrobe-sized version of that. If you had the skill to do that, and he was loading all of his canned goods at the top. And he had all different channels, down at the bottom, and I thought that's a fantastic idea.
The only thing that doesn't work well about those for like home style and that is, okay, say your rack for that one, I don't know, soup. You have 12 cans of soup on there. Okay, you start them on the top, they roll around, come out the bottom, in the front, and you load it up. Well, when you get down to like 6 cans of soup, you now have 6 empty spaces, which, okay, you could load it up with other things that are newer. But if you're just trying to keep everything separate for, by what it is, after about a month, you're just going to have a ton of empty space, especially if you're rotating through your preps to keep them fresh. So that's the only, unless you can keep rotating in the newer stuff behind it, which is the theory behind it, and it works.
Yeah.
Or you wind up with just lots of empty slots. I mean, and then you just have wasted space at that point. But no, those things are restaurants using for the big cans. They have whole roll around racks or shelf units where when they come in, they date it. They just put it on the top. It rolls around. And as the dates come by, they just pull it off the bottom of the rack and it reloads itself. They're awesome. They're really good. They're kind of pricey unless you get the plastic ones, and then they fall apart. I used to have those for sodas in my fridge, and they didn't last more than about a month. They just broke.
Oh.
Yeah, the one that I seen, it was very homemade, and it had lots of different cells. So, he had multiple channels. And I think rotating your food out is a good idea anyway. I mean, if all you're doing is buying tinned food that you don't even eat, and then you just leave it till it goes out of date, that's a massive waste of money and space. I think you should sort of rotate through food that you eat anyway. I mean, there can be some stuff that you can keep a hold of that you're never going to get through that big bag of rice or flour or whatever. But I suppose, the thing about that outdated food as well, I think when you're looking after your preps, you can use that to your advantage as well, because the older stuff, the stock stuff that you now no longer want, it might be a good idea to hold on to it just a little bit longer and put it somewhere that's obvious and accessible. So if you were going to be robbed, for example, that's the kind of stuff they would see and take, the opportunist. And they would perhaps leave your more secure, fresher stuff alone, hopefully, because they can only take what they can carry, really. You provide them with, you put 100 cans of food at the front of your garage that's got a month to go before it's out of date anyway. By the time they realise it's out, they're not going to be checking the dates and stuff. They're just going to open the door and see food, or supplies or preps or whatever it is you're doing this with.
Yeah, cash is good if you have the possibility to have them. For me, it would be an issue because You can sure you can be all over the place, basically, in the woods and create some caches and put some caches there. But the problem is if somebody sees you or an animal dig it up or something,
Yeah.
and if somebody see you dig a hole to bury your cache, they will probably call it in and then, hey, what's he doing?
Yeah, he just buried a body in his backyard.
Yeah.
If you're having outdoor caches, you definitely have to plan where you put them. There's a very specific thing I do. I've had caches for nearly 3 years. I've got 6 at the moment. I'd like to have more than that, but each one of my caches is set up for 30 days. And I tried to work out a cost of it recently because I was going to do a video about it, and I think each one of them is worth about £400. The food being the most expensive part, actually.
Yeah,
you have to be.
Yep.
Yeah, you have to be. You have to be prepared for the fact that it might get found or stolen or whatever. It's not happened to me yet, but I check on my caches at least once a year. All my caches are in places where I go camping, so throughout the year I camp in those locations, and I just check on them, and you don't really have to, resupply them very often as long as you seal them properly, depending on your environment. From what I can see, I've had mine for 3 years, and I've only slightly updated a few of them since then. They seem to be okay. I think I'll probably do a change out this year, next year, sorry, and I'll do a video about that so people can see, because that'll be the first time I've ever done that. They seem to last a few years that way if you do it that way. And caches are always a good way, I think, of spreading out your preps, because if you have more than one, well, it doesn't matter if one's compromised. You go to the next one. That's kind of the point of it.
Because a good idea.
Yeah, you can't bug out. You can't bug out without caches. I think it's a bit of a myth that you can. You need to bug out to a cache or a safe location.
I wanted to share these. My son's on board with preparedness, and he's got some of these cages like this. He's got his own stuff, and I've got enough for the family. But this is how he stores some rifles and food and things like that. He follows the old man and sees what I'm doing, and now he's gathering up his own stuff. Which I'm impressed. I'm glad he's doing that. But let me go back. Stop sharing.
Some of those were full size. I mean, something that when I seen that large square one down at the bottom screen there, you could turn that probably into a bit of a Faraday cage as well.
If you wanted to.
So you could your electronic preps could be stored in there, and you have a Faraday room.
You can get at when a restaurant goes out of business, or a large restaurant, small, the things they sell at auction. I mean, roll around carts, lots of aluminum boxes, stainless, all kinds of stuff that are totally repurposable. Don't ask how I know, because I just know. But yeah, there's things that I look at when I go to auctions, which is now rare because I really don't need much more. When I used to go to auctions with my mindset, I'm looking at a roll around table, a stainless table. And and I got my magnet out. I'm like, okay, is this good stainless or crappy stainless? Okay, it's good stainless. What else can I use it for besides a table? Well, for now, I'll use it for a table. But then some other box that was on sale, like a roll around half size cart, would lay sideways on it, and I could lock it up and bolt it in place, and you can't get the bolts out. So it's like a storage locker underneath my stainless prep table. And nobody's getting in it really easily. Like Bob said, you're going to fight that thing forever trying to get in. You're going to open it up and find out I got, pickling spice and other spices that you just can't eat the stuff. It's there as an ingredient, but it keeps the rodents out and keeps the other rats out.
Yeah, I've got a stainless steel table that I got from a Chinese restaurant. It's in my garage, and he didn't want anything for it. I helped him move a fridge, and he said, I'm getting rid of this stuff. Take what you want. I was, those tables. I mean, it's about the size of a computer desk, but it's nearly £700 if I was to try and buy it on online.
It's got some scratches.
Yeah, he wasn't bothered.
Clean at the table. Yeah.
I'm on the lookout for one of those large fridges with the glass, the large stainless steel fridges, because that would be fantastic for hanging deer and things like that. Because at the moment I don't have anything that big at the moment for that.
You're not going to get them cheap if they work. That's the problem.
Yeah, I've seen people use drinks drink fridges, you get in supermarkets, and that works the same way. But I would prefer one of the kitchen standard ones. I'm just not willing to pay for it. not at those prices.
Another thing you can do is what I've done in the past and still do to an extent. Put your food storage and your goodies in different locations inside of your house, so that if someone does get in, they can't just grab everything in one place and run out with it. They've got to go through your whole house, dig through all this stuff, select what they want, and
so go ahead. Sorry.
I'll finish this up here. I watched some videos where they interview thieves in prison. They're very good videos, interview with a thief. Just type that into YouTube and learn how a criminal thinks. They want to get into your house and stay no more than 10 minutes and get right back out. So I watched many of those interviews, and they will tell you what they look out for, like cameras that are at face level, anything that makes it hard for them. They'll go to the neighbors. They won't even try, So
yeah,
just keep that in mind. Spread stuff out, lock it up if you can, make it hard for them. All right, Go ahead, Mark.
So I know I've gone over this probably a few times over the past year or two or three. Is if you have the space in your house and say something's coming that somebody might be coming into your house if you have to leave for a little bit. And when I tell people, I'm like, look, always keep that 1 or 2 cabinets in your kitchen, the area people most look for food. Keep some random stuff in there. Don't leave it half empty. Leave a fair amount of stuff in there that you really are not worried about. If somebody breaks in and steals it, okay, they took all my chickpea soup, whatever. Is it good? Sure. Am I worried it's gone? No, because I have other stuff hidden elsewhere, like say down in your basement, if you have one, or a garage that doesn't get too hot or too cold. Get one of those steel cabinets that's yellow and just write on there paint or paint and stain and varnish remover, and lock it up. Nobody's going to go looking in there for food, period. So you keep your good stuff locked away in misdirection. And then if something is really going on them, where they're going like, gangs are going house to house or whatever, that's when you literally open your front door in the evening or at night when nobody's looking, throw a bunch of stuff out on the front yard, food cans, dented, whatever, clothing, trash, leave the door open and just leave trash laying everywhere, make it look like somebody already raided that house.
Yeah.
Chances of anybody going in there at that point are slim. They're going to go to the house that wasn't raided yet because they may not find anything and they waste their time. Now, after a time when, okay, the raids are done, now you got people going everywhere just looking for any scrap they can find. Yeah, at that point, clean your crap up or leave it out there. Just shut the door. But, there's ways. It literally misdirection can be your best friend in an event.
That's a fact.
You want people to see something blatantly or semi-hidden, that they, look at that. I think that's something in there. They open up like, hey, jackpot. Look at this. We got canned food. We got jars of peanut butter. We're good to go. And they go over there and grab boxes and load them up and run out the door. They're gone. Meanwhile, your huge stash or stockpile is buried out in the yard or in a cabinet labeled paint, and then you leave paint cans in front of it. So if they do get in it, it just says paint. Don't put anything fragile in there if they're going to knock it over because it'll break. But there's so many ways you can protect your preps, and that's during a situation.
Yeah.
Just after the situation type of thing. It's just misdirection, a lot of it.
Something that just came to my mind. Make your house look like it's been ransacked, and then put up a big sign that says CR has lots of food, and put down his name and address. Go,
Canada.
Maybe draw a map.
Free bus ticket.
Go raid CR's house. Let's see what he says about that.
I seen a video a while ago with somebody who had a root cellar, and they were using this root cellar as a place to store food. Basically, it was only just big enough to maybe get a person in, so it wasn't really that big, and it had like a vent coming from the top of it. But they'd put they got like a metal sign made up, and it said septic tank vent do not cover. just as a pure deterrence. You know, so if somebody was to come across the vent that was out or the entrance to it, they would think, well, it's a septic tank. So, you know, what would be the point of breaking into that? I thought that was a very good idea when I seen it. I don't have anything big enough to put septic. My barrels that I've got cached, if I put septic tank on, it probably wouldn't work. But maybe I could get away with toxic waste or something. I could maybe label them up that way. Yeah, nuclear waste, do not open.
Get some of those quarantine stickers, put it on there, and say danger. You know, quarantinable substance buried here. Do not disturb.
Contains KFC. Do not open.
Dirty baby diaper storage.
In Prepper for the Ages says, lately I haven't been buying food. I've been buying ingredients.
Yep, that's
there. You go.
Yeah, fortified food items that are high calorie that you can fortify foods for, like olive oil, flour, chickpeas, rice, honey. All those things have got long shelf lives and they're highly calorific, and you can fortify other foods with them. So, I mean, there's a lot of calories in olive oil and it lasts a long time, and you can pretty much pour olive oil into any food. I mean, I like olive oil anyway, but you can get away with pouring that into most foods to bulk it up. And the same can be said with flour and rice and stuff as well.
Yeah, I was going to say that earlier. If you're going to buy rice on sale, like, 20-pound bag or a 10 kilo, 20 kilo bag, whatever, and it's on sale, it's good price, great. Make sure you got a seal meal. Split them up into 1 pound or half kilo, whatever you use on the metric side for a standard, like you would buy a bag of that in a store, and separate them. I did that. I separated all my rice into 1 pound bags. I seal them up. And then when I need rice, or just generally on a daily purpose, wife's like, hey, we get some basmati rice. Oh, okay. I run downstairs, open up one of my tubs, grab a pound of basmati rice and bring it up, ready to go. And just date it. Because, I mean, rice doesn't last forever, but it lasts even less if you don't get it away from the air and the oxygen, because that's what kills it. And then bugs get in it and stuff like that. I opened up some sugar the other day. It had bugs in it. I'm like, really? I never sealed it. It was in that paper sack that Domino makes. And I opened it up. I was going to use it for my cowboy candy, and I start dumping it in cups. I'm like, what are these little black specks in here? And I took a good look. I'm like, great. I got bugs in here. So I threw out 5 pounds of sugar.
Oh, okay.
It probably would have been okay. You sometimes get little mites in flour and stuff, which are actually okay if you're that bothered about it. But I mean, see what you're saying, Chef. It's completely true that most people's preps, when we talk about protecting their preps, we're protecting it from the elements, and rodents are the number one thing. Most people lose their preps because their stuff's got wet or moisture's got to it. So Mylar bags, buckets, barrels, sealable containers, vacuum bags, learning how to jar things properly or can things properly. That's the real skill of prepping food, because if you just go buy the stuff in the supermarket, isn't designed to sit in your cupboard for 4 years.
No, it's designed to last on a shelf for a year.
Yeah, maybe max. And so it's the real thing is learning how to really take care of that stuff. I'm quite new to some of that stuff myself. I'd like to get into I was going to get into tinning my own food recently, but then I started watching YouTube videos about botulism and it put me off. But there is a skill there that can be learned, and it's definitely something I should pay more attention to, I think.
Yeah, I watched I believe it was on YouTube. I watched a video a couple of years ago. There were a guy, he had stocked up on food. He had a year worth of food stocked up.
Excuse me.
And his neighbors complained about it. And when he checked his supplies, his supplies were destroyed basically totally. And he had probably food worth a couple of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here's a
were all destroyed. He had to throw it away and restock new.
I've had to do that. Fresh. My own fault.
Yeah. But here's a tool you can get. Because what I've done with some of my food is I put it in 5-gallon buckets after I made sure. Okay, we've been living in this house for about 2 years, and I had to make sure there's no rodents in here. Very important. So I put different dry goods in 5-gallon buckets, And my wife and daughter are Asian. They're very tiny, very petite. But this tool right here is made so you can open 5-gallon buckets easily. It's got a handle on it and something like this, because, you know, even as strong as my hands are, I have a hell of a time getting the lid back off of a 5-gallon bucket with just my fingers. But this might do you some real good right there, guys. Put it on the top, hook it, and pry that lid off, and it comes right off.
Yeah, so 5-gallon buckets, most of us know, or some know, when the lids are new, the outside lip of that lid is extra long and sometimes has what they call a rip strip on there.
Yeah.
And you need to rip that off. You're not going to get that lid off with that extra, 5 millimeters of plastic hanging over the edge. Or they have these little tiny oval slots, like in 12 places around the lid. So you take the tip of a knife or a scissor, not really a scissor, but you got to break that little push down so that hole now extends to the bottom of the lip of the lid. That gives you more leverage with that tool, or even with your hands if you're strong enough, to pop it open. And then just remember, there is a rubber gasket up inside that lid on 99% of those buckets. You don't want to cut through the top edge of it because you're just ruining your gasket. You'll never use that lid again. But they're totally reusable, and you can take that gasket out, pop it out. It's just a hollow rubber tube. Not the best quality thing in the world, but you can wash that off, sterilize it, sanitize everything, and put the bucket back together and slam it shut, and you're good again.
I think another good thing for that tool as well, if you're using caches in the outdoors, something that's been weathered and been rained on and snowed on and went through a few seasons is going to be it's going to be hard to get that lid off anyway. Just because the weathering has sealed it up. And also, I mean, when I put my buckets, my barrels rather, into the ground, I put moisture and oxygen absorbers in them as well.
Very good.
And that draws it almost vacuum seals it a little bit from the inside, but it really pulls down the lid. The beauty of the barrels I've got, they're not, they're the type that have got the metal seal around the outside, like a metal ratchet. And you pull it, and the whole thing springs open that way. So it's not quite as I wouldn't need a tool like that, but I definitely know what you mean when it comes to those 5-gallon buckets. I've got a couple of those in my garage, and even just having stuff sat on top of them in the changeable temperatures of my shed. They're hard to get off, even for me.
Yep. Yes, this little tool that I just showed you will save you a lifetime of worry. Because you can get in there very fast. And like I said, my wife and daughter are tiny women. And I mean, I couldn't imagine leaving them in a situation to where we're hungry. We know we've got food in these buckets, but we can't get to it. Yeah, here you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's
right there.
Nightmare if you can't get to your food.
It is. That's like torture.
Stuffed in those. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a good idea, Bob, to have a tool like that.
Yeah, very good idea. You can actually get tools for opening jar lids and stuff as well. I don't know if that might also be a good thing to have. If you have a lot of jarred goods, then why not have that tool right there as well? Just for that same reason. I didn't think of something like that. It's a very good idea.
You got to think multi-purpose here. So what is round that you need a special strap tool for? Round cylindrical. They need a special strap tool for to get it off to do a function to maintain a vehicle. An oil filter wrench, a strap wrench.
Yep.
Buy one of those. You can not only change the oil in your vehicle, tractor, whatever. Now you can take lids off of jars too.
Yeah, I've made sure in my kitchen that I've got one of those for opening jars, because same situation. The ladies' little hands are tiny and they're weak, and so I put one of those in the kitchen and just clamp down on it like that, and they can open up the jars by themselves,
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I think just generally being quite discreet about what you have as well is probably a good idea as well. We come on things like this and talk about it all the time. I'm happy to talk about my caches, how many I have, and roughly what the distance between them are. And I'm even going to make videos about their contents and things like that. I would never point out exactly where they were. I would never say, look, this is where this is, because you're just inviting trouble that way. And I suppose that's the same at home as well. If you have a fantastic big shed full of all these preps and all this stuff, and you're boasting about it to just one neighbor, even if that's a neighbor you trust, it's like Chinese whispers. He then mentions to somebody else, "Oh, actually, I know a guy. My neighbor's got like this massive cage full of stuff." And then in a time of need, that's the kind of stuff that's remembered, because that's vital information. And before you know it, you're being ransacked or whatever.
All right. I am of the mind, and always will be, that the biggest threat to your safety anytime is people near you, people that you know, relatives, neighbors. And I hear so many, excuse me, so many folks on YouTube. Oh, the government, they're gonna, the Illuminati. Dude, you don't have to worry. The guy right next door is the one who's gonna hurt you. Somebody in the parking lot in the supermarket is gonna hurt you. Yeah. So just to springboard off of what you were saying,
government doesn't want your food.
No, they got their own.
No, and then they can't. That's the thing. Are they going to, everybody's like, they're going to raid my house and take all my freeze-dried food and feed it to their troops. No, they're not, because if it's bad food, they just killed their own troops.
That's right.
They need to have food that is absolutely guaranteed, certified, mil spec, you name it, that is nutritious and reasonably healthy to keep their troops active. They're not going to take your cans of freaking garbanzo beans and Campbell's chicken noodle soup and try to feed it to 400, things. You worry about the local idiots out there that after crap hits the fan, coming to take whatever they can find. That's what you worry about.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Mark. If the government is to that point, it's too late already, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at that point, there is no government. It's just people dressed as soldiers coming to steal your stuff because they're hungry.
Exactly. But I can't really see that happening. But I look at all that stuff. I've been told that in comments for years. Oh, the government's going to come in and take all your. That's fear porn. That's just fear. There's none of that is based on fact. I mean, I could only see maybe in Europe during World War II. And if you're in a world war and you're a civilian on the ground, it's too late for you already.
If you're in the middle of the battlefield and the whole infantry's walking by your farm, they're going to come in and look for something to eat because their supply chains just ran out. So your best bet is to have all your food out ready to go, and they may not burn your farmhouse down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You hear a lot of fear, but sorry, Alan, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when you were talking about World War II there in Europe, I was just going to say that the only, there were never government orders of any nation to say go and ransack people's food stores specifically. But what there were, if you were like bigger than a homestead or like a farm, they would purposely take areas to feed their own troops. So like, you see that in Ukraine just now at the moment, where they occupy specific areas of land based on the agricultural need that they want, and those forces then make those farmers grow certain things for their long-term needs. And some of that happened during the Second World War. But of course, we all know about the opportunists of the Russians marching through, Germany or whatever. They're just going to go into any building they can see, and they're going to help themselves to whatever. There was a lot of cases actually in France when the Nazis occupied France of very, very famous wine cellars getting raided, and just like incredibly rare bottles of wine that are worth thousands of francs or whatever at the time, just getting drunk by a pissed up German who didn't care. To him it was just a bottle of wine. So that kind of thing would happen.
I'll following up with that. A fellow I worked with, he read a book that was written by a German soldier in the Eastern Front. He fought the Russians, and he stated very clearly in his book, the Germans were not the most dangerous. The Russians were not the most dangerous.
Americans were.
No, not the military at all. He said the most dangerous people to the German soldiers in World War II were the starving sometimes they would be groups of them, of German and Russian soldiers and civilians roaming around. And that German wrote about they had no fear, none, no
when you're
fear.
hungry,
They would jump.
desperate people do
Bingo.
desperate things.
Yep. And he said, you'd be in your foxhole standing guard or whatever, and a dude would jump right into your trench, kill you, split you open, and pull out your liver and eat it immediately.
Ugh.
Yeah, but that's that's a story. That's not about protecting your preps, but shit happens, man.
I don't think my liver would be much good to anybody at this point. Good luck with that. There's not much left of it.
Well, that's kind of like my, well, never mind. Mine wouldn't be worth much.
Yeah.
I'm old.
You got other issues going on.
And CR is less hungry now.
Yeah. Good.
I think if you're in a war situation where it's cannibalism's taking place, that's a whole different ball game. That, I mean, that happened in Leningrad. There was very well recorded instances of cannibalism taking place during the battle. Then it happened in China as well when the Japanese occupied it in certain places, I believe. But I think you'll have long since went through your preps by that point. I think.
That's a fact.
You will have been experiencing the same sort of famine as everybody else if that's the case.
Yeah.
Which is always why I'm a little bit hesitant to want to have large stockpiles of stuff. I don't really want a year's supply of food, in my house, because I can't imagine a situation so bad that I think staying in my house for a year is a good idea. I suppose if there's some sort of pandemic, then that's a possibility. But from a conflict point of view, I look at what's going on in Gaza. You see those aerial shots of Gaza? There's not a building standing. Yeah. So, if I lived there, it doesn't matter how much preps I had in preparation for that possibility, which if I lived in Gaza, I would be preparing all the time. And if I lived in Israel, but obviously for two different, one's more powerful than the other, so my preps would change. But if I was a Palestinian in Gaza and I had a year's worth of food in my house and then have no house, what a huge waste of time and money. I would have been better off having caches spread out throughout the country that I know I could sort of leapfrog to, buried deep in the ground, and hope that a drone doesn't see me digging something up and think, there's a legitimate target, which is also very real in a place like that, at least.
Yeah, the difference with what's going on over there, we're not going to mention too many names of any particular country, but did they know that, did I know that some other country was just going to carpet bomb my neighborhood? No. So they might have, a lot of people might have had preps in their basement and stuff, and now they got no house. I mean, even if they had caches somewhere else in the neighborhood, they may not even find it because now it's got, 3 cars and a bus sitting on top of it that got blown off the road by a carpet bomb. At that point, you're just leaving with the skin on your bones and trying to get away. Yeah,
it's always the difficulty of trying to predict what the likely scenario is. That's the problem we have as preppers or survivalists, is nobody's seen the fall of the Berlin Wall coming. All those experts sitting in Washington, London, who are expert Soviet analysts, they didn't know it was going to happen until it happened. And the thing in Gaza, did the Palestinians believe that the Israelis one day would do that? I think they probably had an inkling they would, because they'd done it before. And, that's something that happens. Without getting into politics, I'm not interested in the politics. Yeah. I look at things like that and analyze it from a survivalist point of view. Because if I see something happening in one place, I like to pay attention to how the people react and cope, because that gives me insight into how to prepare for something similar. Yeah. If I was an Israeli, Israelis on the border do have bunkers, your safe rooms and things like that. So they did have a level of preparedness, but their safe rooms were based on the assumption that their only enemy would be rockets falling on them. So some of them didn't even have locks on the doors.
Just a hardened room to get into to protect.
Just a hardened room. And of course, anybody that's ever had the misfortune of watching some of the videos that came out during the October 7th massacre will see the consequences of not preparing to have a hardened room against people and not just things falling from the sky. I imagine that's a lesson a lot of people in Israel are going to now learn, and they will have proper safe rooms. And I imagine after this conflict, when the Palestinians get back to a time of peace and they can rebuild, they'll start thinking about, okay, what happens if my house is leveled again? I don't want to be living in a tent, starving, relying on a food package falling from the sky, because that's no way to live, you know.
Yeah, I kind of try to keep myself and what I do kind of grounded. Prepare for flood, fire, and I have stuff to protect myself and my family, and I have enough food to feed ourselves. And the rest of the neighborhood, you know, you're just gonna have to do the same, because, you know, if they find out that I have food, well, I'm gonna drive you right back out that door, you know. I'm just trying to keep things grounded, you know. You can't prepare for everything. You just can't, you know.
That's impossible.
I agree.
Yeah, I think. I mean, for you, Bob.
Yeah.
I think you know, if you're in the United States, for example, the possibility of an invading force happening is pretty much nil. You know, I know you've got that great enemy to the north, you know, Canada, who could attack it. Yeah, I mean, they could attack at any moment. But
they have the CR up there who's like willing to do anything to take us over.
Yep, I can see it. He's plotting. He's plotting right there.
Okay, here we go. Strike 2 CR right there. Yeah,
I suppose, you know, from an American point of view, there's not a lot of point of paying much attention to that. It's more about civil conflict. That's the bigger issue there. In Europe, I think we probably take a little bit pay more attention to war because of our history, of course. You know, we have, you know, Russia's right on the border of Europe. Britain's a little bit different. You know, the UK hasn't been invaded for over 1,000 years. 1066 was the last time Britain was invaded, but we came close. You know, the Nazis were just, you know, 22 miles away, staring at us, and that was only 80 years ago. So I don't think things like that should be forgotten. And look at all the preparations France put in place prior to the Second World War with their gigantic border wall and tunnels and all this nonsense, and then they basically got beaten a day. You know, so. Yeah. I think some lessons from history are worthwhile. And if I lived in Eastern Europe, you know, Poland and places, Slovakia and places like that, I would be very concerned, obviously, about the Russians, because they are an aggressive country, as we know. So I'd be prepared. My preparations would be different if I was Polish as to what I am, because, you know, I'm British, so I prepare differently. And you know, you guys are American, so you prepare differently. So I don't prepare for hurricanes or earthquakes.
Right. That's what,
because we don't get them. Well, not many anyway. Nothing to, you know, be concerned about.
Yeah, that is a real concern in different parts of the United States is weather, tornadoes, hurricanes, all that. And even here on the Pacific Northwest, we get winter gales that will blow in here and there. I mean, they just come right off the Pacific, and man, they tear trees down and power down. And that's one of the things that I prepare for. You see so many videos on my channel about candles and lanterns and different ways to have lighting and heating, because we've been through it. We've been through several ice storms. An ice storm is not fun, guys. If you haven't been through one of those, it ain't fun.
We get them here on the East Coast all the time.
Yeah, you can verify, man. The trees come down like that, right across your power lines and your roof of your house, and all that. But that's what I try to keep prepared for. Normal things like that I've had experience with. Try to be able to stay in your house and stay warm. Cut down the trees around your house. For God's sakes, do that right now. You know, those trees are not your friends when the weather hits. So they're going to take your roof right out. You know. But I'm done on my tirade.
Norfolk, UK Prepper has a question for Mark here.
What's that?
Can Chef Tech 86 recommend a type of jar brand for canning?
Well, yeah. You got ball jars. The jars themselves used to be great. The older ones, anything pre 6 years ago, were great. Now they're garbage. Superb, SUPURB, makes a great jar. They use I forget what the sand is, but they use the correct sand for making tempered glass like the old Pyrex. So they can handle the hot colds. They can handle a reasonable amount of shock. I personally have mostly old ball jars. I haven't bought jars in probably 5 years. Plus, I have my mom's old jars, which are the ones with the metal clip downs that Ball and Kerr made back in Ball, Kerr, and one other company made way back. I'm talking 80 years ago. And I currently just did a whole bunch of pickled sweet and sour bread and butter pickled jalapenos. I ran out of half pint jars, so I grabbed my mom's pint jars, and you can still get gaskets for them. Now I won't pressure can them, but for water bathing, absolutely. Yeah, CB will say that too. Not as many jars break as you think. No, I haven't lost a lot of jars. I've lost them for dumb mistakes on my part. Put a cold jar in hot water and it'll just crack. But even the old ones can handle it better than I'm kind of bashing the new Ball jars because they're not made in America anymore. They just outsource it. But even jars from like tomato sauces and that. I mean, some of the sauces you read it's made by Ball or Kerr or one of the other companies, and they take a standard canning jar lid and ring. So I saved the crap out of those. I got 1.5 pint jars everywhere from some tomato sauce. I got like 40 cases for free off a busted pallet. I kept all the jars because I'm kind of cheap like that.
Okay. I wonder how when it comes to preserving something, you've got a can and you've got a jar. I wonder what's the better option to have for long term. My thinking would maybe be the jar, although it's slightly more fragile. I can imagine a jar lasting literally forever, whereas a can.
It's not the jar itself; it's the lid. So the lid is the weak point on any, we'll call it modern day canning. If it's a metal lid with a metal ring on it, or just a metal total cap, you got to make sure there's no scratches in it when you first can it if it's high acid food. And I just pulled a couple jars off my shelf last night. I'm like, oh, these lids popped. I wonder why. Oh, it rotted right through the lid because it was a high acid pickle, and there must have been a scratch in the lid. So I threw them out. But truly, for me, for long term, I like the old style. See if I got. Do I have one here? Yeah, I have one here. I'll kind of turn my camera on here. Hold on a second. And there we go. So I have this style.
There you
go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The lid, now this is the wrong lid. This is a blue lid off of a different jar from. I made a mistake, but you can still get the rubber gaskets that go around. I have a box of them right here. Rubber
there
seals.
You go.
You can still buy
there
them.
It is.
I put it on there and I'll water bath it. The only difference with these is you can't tell after a year or two if air got in there. But they tend to seal better than some of the new lids we have out there. The Superb lids are now the best. SUPERB. Those are the best lids you can get and rings right now. The jars about the same. These jars though, I love them. I won't pressure can in them. I will only I'll water bath like pickles, high acid foods and that because I don't worry about them as much. And then I know when I pop the metal bail off the top, if it doesn't just open up, it's pretty well sealed. And you grab the little tab sticking out of that rubber ring. You just tug on it and you will hear it just go swoop. And the air goes right back in. You're good. I got bread and butter pickles downstairs that I made in 16 or 17, 9 years old. My wife said, go grab me a jar of pickles. I went downstairs, brought it up, and she's like, you better check it. I'm like, all right. So I checked it. Yep, foonk, open right up. Smells just like the day I made it, only better because it's been sitting for a few years. And I keep it in the dark. You don't want to keep canned food in a jar in the sunlight or any kind of light, really. You want to keep it dark and cool, somewhere below like 70 degrees. Preferably in the 50s or 60s, but not frozen, although some jars you can freeze.
Another question from Norfolk UK Prepper is, so could you use a jar that comes from a supermarket and reuse them? You can.
So if you want more info on stuff like that, I'm gonna pop out Tammy's thing there. Rebel Canners on YouTube. Just go there. There's a lot of people. Yes, you can reuse them. FDA, EPA, you name it, the 3-letter agency will say, no, you can never use those jars for anything. Yeah, you can. I do it all the time. I don't need to really anymore, but pick regular pickle jars from the store with the thin metal lid on it. You open it up and it pops and you eat your pickles, rinse it out. I would soak the top lid in like really warm water to maybe help revitalize the rubber seal that's in there, but it's built into the lid. And you can use them. I've water bath can like relish and stuff in those, and they work. And you just got to make sure that they vent out while you're doing it, and might have to crank the lid a little tighter when you're done. But they work. But that's up to you. That's a rebel mindset, but it's totally doable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just ask you a question as well. Are you concerned about things like, you get like contaminants like botulism and stuff like that? How do you...
Botulism is the most overused, overrated, barely existent thing out there. The only time you hear about that is when, some lady or person who canned, fish, which is the highest rate of that B word. They canned fish that they caught wild caught salmon, and they canned it up in Alaska, and they brought it down and fed it to their friends, and they all got botulism.
Yeah.
That's not because that was because of poor canning practices, improper times, there's a lot of stuff involved there. You don't just get botulism from a jar of food because it was sitting on a shelf sealed for 4 years. If something starts growing in there, it's going to grow, and chances are it's going to pop the lid. But the first thing you do when you open anything, smell it. If it doesn't smell good, it's probably bad. The nose knows.
Yeah.
So botulism, you look up, just Google cases of botulism in the United States with a time frame, or just put a year in there. You probably get like a single-digit number, maybe a double-digit number, and it's always in a specific location. Like, it happened at CR's house in Canada.
Oh, CR, I'm glad you're here. We
got a rib on him somehow.
Yeah, we got to care and do it.
I've got to admit, I've never heard of anybody getting botulism.
No.
But when I looked into canning and jar malt and goods, it was the only thing I was seeing on the internet. Which just watch the botulism.
And there's a reason for that. And everybody here pretty much knows it. They don't want you preserving your own food.
Yeah.
You must rely on us to do it for you. We're going to do it right. We have scientific studies, and it goes on and on and on. Meanwhile, I've been doing it since I was little. I mean, with my grandma, my mom, and they were very clean about everything back then. And that really stuck with me. And they didn't do meats. They always did like pickles and tomatoes and stuff like that, and preserves. Yeah. But I do meats. I mean, I have pressure canners. I have 4 of them. And I only ever use 2 at a time. I kind of got a little psychotic when I kept finding them on Marketplace. I just kept going buying them. I'm like, great, I got 2 giant ones and 2 middle-sized ones. I can only ever use 2 of them at a time on my stove. But I got them, and they'll never need a gasket. That's the type I bought, the All-Americans. No gasket, ever, ever. The other ones, you need a gasket. 10 years down the road, crap hit the fan, you still have jars, you're growing food. You ain't going to the store to buy gaskets for it. Nope, you're stuck. Now you're water bathing instead of pressure canning. So I got to run these chicken breasts downstairs and get them through the chamber sealer. I'll be back in a couple minutes.
All right. Yeah, Hugo, that's right. Yeah, canned food has no additives or preservatives. Better for you. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely.
That's how I grew up. Is we had it was good family bonding time for us when I was growing up. We grew all of our own food. We had 1 acre of good soil, and my dad and I would go out and knock the weeds down with a garden hoe. And every Sunday, my dad would drive and pick up my grandparents every Sunday, and it was their way of checking up on them. And at the end of the summer, it was good family memories because we'd have paper bags full of green beans that we grew. And all of us would have a kitchen knife, and we'd sit there and cut up the green beans and get them ready for canning. I mean, bags and bags of just green beans and other stuff. Good family bonding time there. Because I used to listen to my grandfather's BS hunting stories, how he killed 800 rabbits in one day. Like grandpa BS, but it was good times. Sunday we'd have all the food ready, and on Monday morning my mom was in the kitchen canning that stuff, man. We ate well. We ate really well.
Yeah. Sounds good, that kind of stuff. A lot of people don't do that kind of thing anymore. That's it's becoming a lost art.
It is.
I think the microbrewery as well is becoming a bit of a lost art. I've did a little bit of homemade wine and beer in the past. Not very well, to be honest, but gave me an insight into how to go about doing that. And actually, alcohol is actually a good prep to have. I mean, not just for the obvious reason. It's a good bar, so it has nutritional value, especially if it's a good wine or a particularly good beer, for example. You can use that in cooking products and stuff, and it's pretty cheap to make it yourself. It's quite easy to do, and you can do it with a lot of fairly raw ingredients. You need a lot of sugar. I realised that when I was doing it, and you need a place to do it. Like with the correct temperatures. I did it in an airing cupboard the first time round and ended up with popped bottles of beer all over the place. I didn't quite have the temperature right, but that's another thing to maybe look to prep with.
Yeah, I agree. Especially vodka, as Norfolk UK Prepper says, that is cheap, and you can use it for cleaning wounds.
Yeah.
In an emergency, you should not use the color booze or anything like that. It's better with a pure, clean, like vodka.
Yeah, the pure spirits have got a multitude of uses because they can be used as fuels, disinfectants. All sorts of stuff. I suppose
So
the higher the purity, the better.
That will have a high value as a barter item.
Definitely. And the shelf life of things like bottles of vodka I'm not sure what they are, but they're immense.
Well, if it's unopened, indefinitely, basically.
Possibly, yeah. Wine certainly can last a long time given the right storage. It has to be better stored, I think, like in a wine cellar type environment. But
and you need to protect that too, because everyone wants wine, booze, or whatever they can put their hands on.
Yeah,
especially in a disaster or a long-term event. People want alcohol.
Yeah, I think another type of prep as well that's worthy of mentioning and talking about, especially from making sure it's in good condition when you come to need it, are battery powered items. Anything battery powered, battery storage devices, whether that be power banks or just your torches and all this kind of stuff. There's been occasions where I've left batteries and stuff and forgot about it, and a couple of years later it's when all that white crystallized way the battery is dissolved basically in the device, and now it's no longer of any use. I think batteries, like alkaline batteries and stuff, have got quite long shelf lives anyway, and it's a good idea to keep them stockpiled, but it's definitely something you have to rotate your way through as well as your battery storage. But a lot of people probably just ignore that. And if you have power banks and battery banks, allowing them to completely discharge and then be left for a long period of time, it'd just be like any, like your phone is going to diminish when you really need it.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. And tobacco is another barter item as well. And that will be high value on that too. Coffee, the same thing.
Yeah. There's probably there's a few items that are like wild card items that people don't think about that at one point in our past were very, very valuable, like nails. Nails are incredibly valuable to people who don't have nails, for hammering into wood, because they're hard to make. I mean, if you try and it's very easy to nail two pieces of wood together. when you have a nail. If you don't have a nail, it's incredibly difficult to join two pieces of wood together. It can be done, but not easily. And in the the pioneer days and the likes, nails were an item that were bartered heavily and traded quite a lot.
Yeah. Lisa Lot says you can make herbal tinctures with vodka. Yeah, you can.
Let me present a video here, but in all of our cars in my family, we've got 12 of these bottles of water just in the back of the car. And I went through all the cars, and we've got 4 of these left. That's it. We've used them all, and I replaced them with a dozen bottles of each car. But I'm gonna present a video to you guys because you guys know that I've gotten water sick overseas, and you don't want that. But this is something that I share screen. This is Little Creek Distillery water distiller. It's on my channel, but it's really simple to use. And all 4 of these bottles plus tap water later today are going to be sanitized. And I drink sanitized water occasionally for my coffee, and I also store it. So look into getting something like this. It's simple enough to use, and if a knuckle dragon ape like me can figure out how to sanitize water, anybody can do it. But that's one thing you want to. That's part of protecting your storage.
Yeah.
Protect what you have. You can store distilled water indefinitely because there are no germs in that stuff. There's no plastic. There's nothing in there but pure H2O. So,
but you need to add some electrolytes to it.
Yeah, we have that in separate containers. Some of that baby stuff, the Pedialyte. We have several bottles of those in our home. But this is a good way because I don't know, this water is over a year old, and I'm not going to throw it away. I'm just going to sanitize it and use it for my daily use and or store it. Yeah. If a primate like me can figure out how to distill water to make it absolutely pure, you can do it too. So, in fact, I'm going to bounce out of here, and now the wife's not home, I can have free range in the kitchen, and I'll start sanitizing some more water.
Yeah.
All right, CR, you got away with it again today. Yeah, you didn't get fired yet. No, you did not.
No.
You did not. All right, later, guys. Peace out. God bless.
See you later.
Peace out.
Later.
And there we have Dear Love Survival. Good to see you, brother.
Good evening, all. How you doing, everybody?
We're doing good.
Trying to sort out this band again. How you keeping, Shadow?
Well, I'm doing pretty good.
Jeff? Alan?
I'm doing good, mate. How are you?
Keeping in there. Thankful for the grace. Another day.
Yep. What's your views on protecting the preps that you have?
Yep, it's been very interesting so far, the subject, protecting your preps before, during, and after an event. Right, well, okay.
We haven't talked too much about the after the event yet. I suppose that we can get onto that at some point.
Yeah, we do. We have plenty of time.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me okay, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, obviously, try not to tell everybody, too many people. I mean, yes, you can talk about ideas and yes, we could talk about a few things that we got, and we're gonna have to talk about other things that we got. I mean, we all know everybody says to us, "Oh, you're so prepared. We're gonna come to your house." I think every single prepper's heard that. on the planet.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's a single person who's never had someone say to him, you know, after being told, obviously, hey, you know, you're a prepper, you know what things are going on, and as soon as you say that, they sort of look. There's a pause anyway. They're sort of looking at you, and you're sort of looking at them as you're talking to them, and you sort of know. Anyway, yeah. Well, for me personally, that's what I you know, not to tell too many people before and after. You know, I've got right into squirrels, and I was also going to ask a couple of questions as well, Jeff, and
Right into squirrel.
if you know, if how long nuts store for? Anyone?
I'm assuming they would have to be completely dry, like in a bag or something.
Well, I mean, there is a reason why I'm asking that as well, because you know squirrels quite often collect nuts as well when they find them and what have you. And I was thinking, well, you know, they get through to the next, they get through the winter, and it's a high fat diet. And I was thinking, wow, you know, can we have like nuts? I mean, do you?
Hey, Guardian.
Do you have nuts in your caches, Alan?
Actually, I don't. No. In fact, the closest I have is peanut butter, because it stores quite well, and there's a high calorific value to that, and it's good for bait. So that's the only thing I have nuts wise.
Good evening,
Yeah,
guys.
peanut butter is
Make sure
good.
you got peanut butter, yeah.
Peanut butter is absolutely great. But coming back to nuts, do you know anything about nuts, Guardian? Long-term storage. Because I was talking about squirrels, saying, you know, they store a lot of these caches. They've got all caches everywhere, and they get through the season. And I was thinking, well, maybe it might be a good idea to have high fatty things. And what are high fatty things other than nuts that we can store?
Just quickly, hey everybody good to see the panel.
Hi, Gordon.
Good to see you guys. What's up, Shadow? So yeah, surprisingly that you asked that, macadamia nuts grow really well here in the southern hemisphere in certain areas, and they've got an extremely high profit value as well. Macadamia nuts specifically, and they found out a while back that macadamia, the nuts themselves, have actually got good fats in them, like you say avocado, good fats and that type of thing.
Right.
But yeah, macadamia nuts. It's the first time in my life that I'm growing macadamia trees, and I've got 2 on our property, and they've just started to. They're about chest height to me, and they've just started to come up with a little bit of nuts. I'm coming off it as well. So this season or next season, I'll be getting our first ones. So I think when it comes to nuts as well, what you can always do is do some guerrilla gardening near your bug out locations. Nuts are extremely good for protein, and it's a really good amount of high nutrition as well. So if you can, in the meantime, plant a couple of nut trees near your bug out locations, it's absolutely something that I'd recommend. That's just my 2 cents on it.
And as we spoke about before as well, things like potatoes or anything you can, if you can get anything growing, great. You know, something is better than nothing. If I turned up in the field where there was loads of onions, well, I'll just do an onion soup.
I think as well, you're talking about squirrels. You said you're getting right into squirrels just now, and of course, haven't we all getting into squirrels? But if the thing about things like squirrels and things like that store, they're the animals that store preps in certain locations. That gives you an opportunity, one, to raid their stores. I mean, if that's something you can have, but from a survival point of view, something that I've actually putting a video together just now is trapping the animals themselves based on their stores. So I'm not so much interested in the nuts of the squirrels. I'm more interested in the squirrels. And
poor squirrels. No squirrels were hurt in the making of this video, but if anyone's listening out there,
something as simple as this and your preps. These are very inexpensive rat traps. I've got some mouse traps as well, but these are fantastic squirrel traps. You know, you just tie a line to the end of them like this, and you can actually see where squirrels run along certain branches. That they actually, if you watch a squirrel long enough, a grey squirrel, which the type you get in the UK and North America and most of Europe, I think the red ones act a little bit differently because they have a different diet, but the grey ones will run across the same sort of branches all the time, and they will store things in different places. And by putting something like this on that branch and making sure that there's no scent on it, you can camouflage it a little bit using charcoal and stuff. A little bit of peanut butter right there, you'll get yourself a squirrel. That's a very good protein source in a survival type situation. Of course, you can catch other things with this as well. Even the small mouse traps, you can use those to catch smaller animals that you can then use for bait as well. The other very good thing that traps like this are good for, and the smaller ones, I think I've got some of the smaller ones lying around. Yeah, there's a smaller one. They're also good for catching birds. So any kind of bird, you put a little bit of bread or whatever there, and then in times of need, it's incredibly easy to catch birds and trap animals and do things like that. Trap lines are one of the most important things in long-term survival situations. And rather than trying to make traps, which you can do, but it's time-consuming and it's long, these cost £2. I got a pack of 6 of these for £9.
If you know what you're doing, they're reusable essentially as well. If you can re-trigger them.
Yeah, they're triggers. They're triggers.
Yeah, precisely. So that's actually really well thought out, and I really admire it when people think about long-term prepping. Like, I'm never coming home kits and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like tools that would legitimately stand the test of time. So yeah, that's brilliant. I'm glad that you've got like a couple of them for the sake of redundancy as well.
Yeah, pure redundancy. I mean, you have several of them. If you put 10 of those traps, they don't weigh much, they don't cost much. You put 10 of those on a cache. If you find yourself in a situation where you're hunkering down for the next month, at least you've got a means to put some traps around about you, because that's passive. That's passive trapping. Passive. Anything you can do passively is of great value.
Can I just add quickly? Sorry, go ahead.
I just got to say, Alan, after years of doing this, thank you. It never occurred to me to use a large rodent trap to catch my food. And you just sparked a whole new debate inside my own head.
Well,
that's good thinking. I agree, Chef Tech. That's brilliant thinking. Go ahead, Darila.
Yeah, a lot of people use mouse traps, and on YouTube, you've got a few people, not a lot of people, but a few people do talk about having them, and they're a great idea. You could have them spread around as well. There's a chap in America, I'm trying to recall his YouTube channel, and he's got caches with loads, all sorts of traps. And I was like, wow, because like in some of my kits, you've got fishing kits, but you look at some of the kits in America, it's like, wow, mind you, they do go after things like gators and big fish, and here I'm not really a sort of that knowledgeable about fishing in the UK, but
you could easily imagine a situation, not even just out in the wilderness. Food is in extreme shortage for some reason, and you're in your house. You're in a normal terrace house, let's say, just a normal 2-bedroom house, front and back garden, whatever, and you've got your cache there of tinned food, rice, and olive oil stuff that you've prepped for. If you can put 6 or 7 of those traps in your garden and catch a pigeon, I tell you what, that's a welcome piece of protein that you can add to your day.
City pigeons, though. You've got to be careful with those.
Well, those London pigeons, maybe not, but the big fat wood pigeons that you get where I live, they're fine.
Woodland. You really want to go for like woodland pigeons. They're sort of like grey and white, and they're much more healthier, more plump. I wouldn't dare go anywhere because they carry a lot of diseases. And incidentally, staying on the subject of pigeons, some of the great grandfathers of these pigeons were war heroes. So we have to respect the pigeons. Okay? Like some of the
to a point.
Yes. Some of them were Nazi pigeons.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, they interbred. They must have interbred then. If they must have found peace with each other. So okay.
Now that the pigeons have become political, I'm just going to eat all of them. I really don't care. If I'm hungry, I'm eating it. I don't care whose grandfather it was or great grandbaby. I'm hungry. Eat your food.
Yeah. I don't care. Even if I was hungry, I wouldn't eat a city pigeon.
You see, I don't know, like realistically, when it comes down to how hungry you are, I think that if you've got that strong will to survive, and even though the topic does kind of, we could get in trouble with Peter and that type of thing if you if you speak too much about the mass assassination of pigeons as well. Just for a second, if you think about what happened in the States, how many pigeons like they were like clouding the skies at some points, and during like a certain era, the amount of pigeons that got like taken out in the sky was like just phenomenal. There's also something that realistically, if you're hungry and if there isn't much else to eat and you need to eat and you're a human being, like, and even if you want to look along the lines of just for religion, just for a moment, God gave us the creative minds to also look after the planet, but also make sure that we are looked after and those around us. We are supposed to be shepherds not only to the sheep, but also to like the people around us as well, 311. I'm sure that you agree with that. So when it comes down to, like, just quickly, you brought up a brilliant topic, which is passive fishing. Like, passive fishing, if you know how to do it, the two of them combined, you might not have brought it up directly, but you brought up the fishing element. And if you have the capability to not only do, because those traps in combination with having the capability to build either fish traps or to do like your hanging reel, so that it is a line that you can leave while you're doing other activities, those are brilliant ways on the long term to try and make sure that you have that self-reliance.
Yeah, you mean those yo-yo reels?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yo-yo reels. Yes, sir. Yeah. Good job, Shadow.
Bankline and spring traps are one of the easiest passive fishing techniques you can employ, or nets, obviously, are also another very good system as well. But
yeah, nets are good.
Yeah, trap lining is one of the fundamental principles of long-term survival. It's a slightly different topic to what we're talking just now, but I mean, purely from a prep point of view, I think if you're looking after your preps and you've got preps, things like having some sort of traps are a good idea. And the good thing about them, like Guardian mentioned, is you can turn them into trigger mechanisms for security, and there's lots of methods for that as well.
I don't know if you can make out the thorns on
hawthorns.
Hawthorns.
Yep.
With hawthorns, you can improvise fishing hooks.
Yeah. It's got to have a good strong one, because they do tend to snap if a fish bites, and it'll get lodged in the roof or side of its mouth or gills, and then you just pull the stick back.
A very common technique for using hawthorns as a fishing hook back in the day is actually in London, funnily enough. You catch flatfish with them. And what you do is you lay out lines using hawthorn hooks and tidal zones.
Someone's been watching, what's his name? What's our most favourite survivalist? Sorry to cut into.
Oh, Ray Mears.
You've been watching Ray Mears.
Yeah, I think he might have done this at some point. But yeah, laying out lines in tidal rivers is a common way of using hawthorns, and they used to do that in London.
We used to do that up in Maine. When I lived up in Maine, we would go out in some of these, there were old fishing weirs. It was like a giant question mark shaped net. They weren't using them anymore. The nets were long gone. And but we would walk out there during a low tide and string a string of just hooks with clams or bait on it, and let it lay on the sand. And then the tide would come back in. We'd go back 12 hours later. The tide's going back out, and we'd have like 8 or 10 flounder, or sometimes skate or other assorted fish we didn't want. But they'd be on there. That was passive fishing. It was great. We'd set them at 6 o'clock at night and go back at 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd have dinner ready to go by noon.
Abundance.
Yeah,
they're all abandoned fishing weirs. Yeah.
Coastal survival is the easiest.
Sorry, have you ever used a rock formation in the river where you sort of funnel fish into one little place?
Yep.
Yeah, I was just saying that coastal survival is actually of all the ways to survive purely off the land, which is quite a difficult thing to do from a hunter-gatherer point of view. The coast is the easiest place to do it in most parts of the world, even the tropics. People think the tropics is abundant of fruit and veg and stuff, and it really isn't. There's the growing seasons there are very sporadic as well, but coastal survival is incredibly easy because it's quite passive as well. You can walk along. Most people recognize mussels and clams and all these kind of things easy gather. Seaweeds are very high in nutrition, iodine, things like that. All seaweeds in the UK are edible. Most marine fish are edible, especially in the North Sea, things like that. Almost all I think all freshwater fish are edible. I might be slightly wrong there.
Yeah,
I don't think there
for
are any
the most
poisonous
part,
ones.
they are. Some are just bony. You know, you don't want them like carp and stuff like that. Yep, it's edible. You're gonna be picking bones out of your teeth for a week, but yeah, it's still edible.
Maybe some salt. If you've got some salt in a little bag as well, so you can get those clams. What are they called? Those things that pop up if you put
razor clams. Razor clams.
Razor clams, and all kinds of stuff.
Having the capability to obviously desalinate as well while you're on the coast, and evidence to why the coastal living and coastal survival is so key. You can look across the whole globe and look at where a lot of the cities are. Even if you look at the globe and you look at those nighttime maps that have like all the lights, you can see just evidence of how well coastal survival worked out for man while they were busy, just scattering around and building in early days. You can see that they mostly built near channels, near riverheads, near mouths, near estuaries, where there was that abundance of food resources, as you're saying as well. It's definitely one of those ways that if you want to survive, the ocean is a good idea to stick around here.
Certainly. I mean, the reverse osmosis is an important skill to learn as well. The thing about coastal survival is, I know I could talk about this kind of stuff for hours, but the coast is also one of the easiest places to traverse. You can actually very easily find long stretches of beach and shingle and stuff that you can walk long distances. It's straight. You can generally see ahead of yourself. There's things get washed up, plastic, wood, resources wash up that way. Even in the wintertime, the coast tends to be a little bit less impacted by things like heavy snowfall or ice. So that's why the ancestors of the United Kingdom, when we moved into the UK during the Ice Age, they actually followed the coast up the west coast of the UK. They didn't go inland because most of it was forest and bog. They went along the coast, and not far from where I live, there are these large caves next to the coast, and there are these huge piles of shells called midden mounds, and those are Paleolithic people back in the day, nearly 10,000 years ago, who were eating mussels and clams, and they would just throw them to the side, and those mounds of shells are actually still there to this day.
The only one thing I have my doubts about in a long-term issue, and yes, we're just picking on a particular scenario. Crap hits the fan, power's out, all that. We're on our own. 6-8 months, a year later, you're on the beach looking for fish and that. What about all the factories and stuff that are above you that are running all their waste, and that the waste is all leaking into the streams and tributaries, winding up down in that little area you're now fishing in? You kind of got to watch for that, because seafood may taste good. Seafood can kill you if it was toxic in some respect. I mean, not all, but every now and then. I mean, we have the red tide, and I kind of have my doubts about that too here in the United States. But we have that, and it's a toxic algae, red bloom of algae, which is toxic to humans. So from what we're told, I've never heard of anybody dying from eating a clam that was in a red tide area and died from it. Maybe sick, but it maybe was the way they preserved it or cooked it. But that's the only thing I would worry about is, okay, I'm on the seaside somewhere, and I'm like the only one around. But what was above me? What's in those tributaries coming down? You almost need a map to see where the streams are coming in, which way the current's flowing in the ocean, so you can kind of judge, okay, what was above that? Oh, look, the city of blah, blah was up there, and it was a huge industrial city, and all that garbage that they had in those factories, the chemicals and toxins and that, had just been leaking out for years into the streams and winding up in the ocean. So that's the only that's the one thing I would be worried about with that.
In Katerina, all the water was mixed, and it was all the toxic, all the sewage.
Yep.
It must have been terrible. And people were actually walking through that stuff.
It's a very good point when it comes to coastal. So I mean, a lot of the stuff you're talking about there, Chef, things like mussels. Yeah, things like mussels are susceptible to those kind of contaminants because they're literally filter feeders. Yeah, so I would focus on other things on the coast. The mussels are the easiest thing to identify because most people know what they look for. But I would pay more attention to things like seaweeds and crabs and fish and things like that.
It also greatly depends on where, like as you were saying, that's over there in the US, Chef Tech, and I think that in the US with the industrialization that you guys have experienced, like being a first world, and also over in the UK, there are so many places throughout your region that are just extremely built up, like where you just see like a large amount of populace. Whereas over here in South Africa and perhaps somewhere in parts of Sweden as well, where Shadow's from, like we have a lot less industrialization. So even though we do have the corruption in our countries that we do, it's actually quite coincidental that our corruption is protecting our preps, because our preps is our natural resource. And if you look at the natural resource of our lands, like because there's so much corruption, a lot of the building actually takes a really long time, and our country hasn't got a lot of like industrialization and that type of thing. So you'd be surprised how corruption can actually play a good part, because instead of it going to building and bulldozing like natural areas, instead it gets like stolen up and then nothing gets built. So like, there's actually like silver linings if you look for them.
In a sad way, that makes so much sense. I had never even occurred to me. You're right.
Yeah.
And you have another question from Norfolk, UK, Prepper Mark. I have another question for Chef Tech 86. Is there a limit to what you can freeze dry in a freeze dryer?
Yes and no. High fat foods, fat doesn't freeze, so you can't really freeze dry it. Now I freeze dry
and the dog went whoa. Sorry.
Yeah, my dog is. As soon as I start talking, he starts barking because he knows I'm not paying attention to him.
Sorry.
But no, I mean I freeze dry my own MREs. I mean I make like say baked ziti. I'll make baked ziti or just ziti. I'll cook the noodles. I overcook them on purpose. There's a reason for that. And you don't want it al dente because when you rehydrate it, they're crunchy and it doesn't work well. So you overcook them. But and then I'll have my sauce, which I like. A little bit of olive oil is fine. And then ground beef. I'll cook my ground beef off or ground pork. I'll mix it, chicken, turkey, whatever. I mix it all in there, make the sauce the way I like it. I'll make my portions. I'll freeze it and freeze dry it, and I bag it up. So when I add it, I just weigh what it was when it went in. Say it was 8 ounces going in, it was 2 ounces coming out. An ounce of weight is an ounce of water, and I'll put that's what left. So I'll put in 6 ounces of boiling water, let it sit for a few minutes, and I got ziti. I even freeze dry shredded cheese. That's a whole nother topic, which I could go on with that for a while. But you can freeze dry shredded cheese. I do that. I mix shredded mozzarella, freeze dried in my sauce at my MRE. So when I rehydrate it, the cheese melts. It's great. It's just you can do pretty much anything you want. But there's a whole bunch of websites out there that I would suggest, but other ones that I'd say don't waste your time with because they don't really teach you. They just show you what they did, and you have to make your own decisions from there. So.
The dog's like high fat food. Where is it?
I love that your dog gets jealous of the fact that you're giving attention to the screen and then calling for your attention.
I'm on my deck. He's doing it again. I'm talking. I'm not looking at him. Stop it.
Yeah, my dog does exactly the same. He comes over every Saturday. He doesn't sit near me usually, and then every Saturday he comes next to me, like, talk to me. Why are you talking to the screen in front of you? What's going on here?
You know, that's a brilliant way to protect your preps and to stay on conversation, to stay on point as well. Like where you guys are speaking about your dogs, like also being there and being alert in that. Like when you're doing like other functions, like whatever it is within your, survival scenario, like dogs can be an absolute aspect of survival just because they can be a system to basically alert you, like an early warning system.
Yeah.
So
their ears are always up there. Well, most dogs, not all dogs, most dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and cats, you can keep your cats. Something happens, they run away and hide. So unless you're paying attention to your cat and it runs and hides, okay, I guess something's coming out because my cat just went and hid. But you never hear it going, so you don't know.
Right, like cats. This is psycho, right? I've just discovered this within the last year of my life. But like cats have a certain chemical and a certain like disease that they kind of put on people, where they actually manipulate a person into liking them and loving them more. Like if you look into the psychological elements of it, like that's just crazy. And then obviously like cats being able to protect like certain stock is brilliant, where there's like mice and small rodents and that type of thing. Like dogs being there, dogs as well are good for that. But dogs and cats in combination, like cats in a barnyard, it's incredible. Like just how well they keep away like all rodents. Like the rodents can pick up that there's cats nearby.
Troy,
they want to go close.
I heard that dogs can hear up to like 400 yards. Like if you're I think 400 meters or 400 yards. If you're like in the forest and you're creeping through, and a dog can hear so far ahead. Yeah. Like any twig sort of breaks, any kind of leaf sort of crunches, he's on it.
Yeah, great sense of smell as well.
Yeah, great sense of smell. And that's most dogs. Now, some of your little pocket puppies, the little hybrid, whatever, I call them pocket puppies. Yeah, they just bark all the time. It's like, no, you're worthless to me. You're going to give away my position. At least a German Shepherd or some other larger breed, you can train him just to be quiet. I just never trained Bear to be quiet. He just barks when he wants something. But
a quick story about cats as well, coming back to cats, and then we're going to go over to what Alan said as well after event. Going to cats, there was a story about this Siamese cat that this old lady owned, and she was in her 80s, and something happened in her flat, and people came, and there was blood all on the stairs, the top of the stairways. And what happened was the cat attacked this burglar.
yeah.
I mean,
You can get some vicious cats for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I have 2 Jack Russells, so I'm not really a cat person. You know,
well, Jack Russells are four. They just don't care.
They're smart and fast.
yeah. They also think they're the size of a German Shepherd. Which
Yeah,
is
They're
nice.
so naughty. They're like one of the naughtiest breeds in the world as well.
Yeah, they used to one of those little dogs used to terrorize me when I was really little. He used to go in this school, and the caretaker had this little dog, and I tell you, when this dog came, it was like it scared the hell out of me. It was only small, but where it was so sort of vicious, I was only small. I was like 6 years old, 7 maybe. I don't know if you guys at 6 or 7 would have, stood your ground on one of those. Come on, be honest.
I think the interesting thing about animals and protecting your preps is they're useful as well. I mean, not just trained dogs and burglar attacking cats, but understanding the way that animals react to people can be a means of protecting your preps. So cattle, for example, curious cattle will walk towards a person in a bush, and sniff around. Birds in a field will fly away from predators, things like that,
So, no, go ahead.
No, I was just I don't want to labour the point too much, but I think paying attention to the way the animals react can be a useful mechanism for your own protection and your preps protection, and it goes beyond just a guard dog. Wild animals will react in certain ways.
You go into the woods, the birds are chirping, and all of a sudden, you're sitting still doing something. You hear the birds, and all of a sudden they go quiet.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention to your surroundings, you're going, it went quiet. What's around? Is it a bigger predator for the birds? Is it a person? Is it a hunter, something? And that's when you kind of hunker down and try to look in the direction where the birds were chirping and are now not chirping. Because, knowing your surroundings, understanding nature and its surroundings is another aspect of protecting your preps and you. And
it also tells you about the health of the environment. A lot of people in the comments were going on about how terrible the coast is because of pollution and stuff. Not all coasts are that bad. There's plenty of places in the west coast of Scotland that are relatively clean. But the animals that live in these places are indicators to the health of the environment. So if you're seeing birds and things drinking in freshwater streams and plenty of fish, that's probably fairly healthy water. The likeliness of that being contaminated are minimal. And it's the same with the coast as well. If you're seeing an abundance of fish and other animals and things like that, and there doesn't appear to be anything wrong with them, you can take that as an indicator, not a pure indicator, but at least an indicator that the health of the region isn't too bad.
You speak of that, and just quickly, I wanted to raise a point. But before I raise that particular point, I will say that the amount, if there was a global, a proper SHTF apocalyptic type of scenario, it would be very, very interesting and beautiful, in fact, to see how nature is able to kind of gain ground and retain its former glory. To what
Chernobyl.
Yeah, exactly, sir.
Yeah.
So
that's a good example.
Brilliant case study, specifically. So something that I also wanted to mention when it comes to animals and preps and protecting your preps and your family and yourself is I have definitely throughout my life, and I've believed this since my younger years, and it's proven to be correct so many different times, the way that people treat animals, like specifically, we're not speaking about getting birds for food, that's a different topic, or squirrels and that type of thing for survival. I'm speaking about like the way that people treat like animals, their four-legged friends, whether they treat like how they treat dogs and how dogs actually treat them. like the way that dogs pick up on certain vibes around certain people, like don't ignore that either. And like legitimately, I cannot overemphasize this enough. But the fact is that like there have been so many different accounts where I was a bit like concerned about a person. I saw them not be too friendly towards animals, and it turned out that they actually were pretty like, you know, twisted and messed up at the end of the day as well. Specifically, this one individual, and I'll just allow me for 20 seconds to quickly cover this. So all the time, I was friends with this guy for about 15 years, and he was just like never really caring towards animals. Even where he was, like there were dogs where he stayed and stuff as well, and he just never really gave them attention. He was always like kind of cold shouldering them and like treating them like they're second class kind of, you know, beings in a way. And it turned out that even after this 15-year friendship, like he messed up so badly that he's absolutely not my friend anymore, and he went to go like serve 5 years sentence, like in prison for doing something heinous. And it just was like such a big punch and silver lining, like not silver lining, but something so prominent in like that whole experience of make sure within your preps, which, you know, are your community in some ways as well, that you're being extremely observant to how your dogs treat certain people and how certain people treat those four-legged friends. Because if a person cannot even extend the same amount of compassion to a four-legged friend, to something that's like that, how do you expect it to extend any sort of trust or loyalty towards yourself or your group?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've always seen it as an indicator of a person. Based on how they treat animals. That's definitely true. 100% with you there. Personally, I mean, I love animals. I love nature. I love wildlife. I have dogs and things like that as well. I'm also a hunter because, you know, I'm not a vegetarian. One of the reasons that I hunt deer, for example, is, you know, some people will say, well, if you like deer and you love animals, how can you go out and hunt a deer? The reason I got into hunting, apart from growing up in that kind of background, is because I'm so against factory farming. I'd rather eat an animal that was completely wild, didn't see it coming, and I know exactly what happened to it, and it died painlessly, than some poor pig that's went through an abattoir. I am a hypocrite. I do eat some animals that come from factory farms, of course, but I try and limit that as much as possible. But I have a freezer full of wild game, which I've sourced myself. I know the condition that animal was in. It lived a good life, and it didn't even know it was about to die. It happened instantly. And, you know, I consume everything I hunt. I know I was showing traps and stuff earlier and talking about squirrels. I've never did that before. It's purely just it's a survival piece of knowledge.
Yes.
I've never trapped a squirrel in a mouse trap.
Right.
You know, but it's good to have the knowledge anyway, and it's good to have the practice and the understanding and have the preps in place. You know, I don't even trapping itself. I plan on doing a whole series of videos on trapping to do with snares, for example. You can actually snare a lot of large animals with snares and small snares, and I'll demonstrate how to do that. But I won't actually harm an animal, and I'll never do that. You know, especially just for YouTube content. I don't actually think snaring is legal in my country, so for that reason alone, I wouldn't do it. But it's still a knowledgeable thing to have and something you should consider. But like Guardian was saying, to me, the easiest indicator to know whether a person's a good person or not is how do they treat animals.
And the elderly and people that are like disabled, people with disabilities and the elderly, people who treat people like that a specific way as well. You can quickly see like a person's compassion, and compassion will usually be compassion towards you at the end of the day as well. Yeah. Another quick defining thing is that's why like it really comes, and I'd love to hear other people's opinions specifically around these topics as well. But that's why I'll also say that be careful of people who have strong bias as well. A person that is against a whole group of people will usually have such hatred within their hearts that they will inflict yourself as well, like with that same level of hatred at some point. So just be very careful of people that aren't open and willing to, like, you know, the general public and pretty much different people from all walks of life. Be happy, be understanding of that as well as an indicator.
Yeah, for sure. I think you could link this to our topic as well about, you know, knowing who to trust and who to garnish, you know, friendships with when it comes to barter, and who you invite into, you know, your prep or stash in order to barter with or trade with, and getting to know people and strangers and stuff like that. There's lots of red flags for people. I think most people have got an inbuilt detection for people who are, there's a red flag behind them, you know. So if somebody, like Guardian was saying, was particularly hostile towards a certain group for whatever reason, some sort of real religion or race or something, there's probably something else going on with that person that makes them particularly untrustworthy, especially if they're so susceptible to to that kind of thinking. You know, the group think aspect of it can make a person particularly dangerous. This can go in lots of different directions, that kind of conversation as well. I mean, there are certain religious groups and stuff that if I was to meet somebody of a particular religion, I would be thinking, is that a good religion or is that a hostile religion? Is that a religion that's hostile to me based on the fact that I'm not that religion? So if I was in that group, it would be okay, but if I wasn't, it might not be okay, because that's a group think, and you know, that's something to be careful about as well, in my opinion.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
That absolutely comes down to there being great people and crappy people, like bad people of all different of the faiths as well. I truly have seen time and again where people that are from each different religion have shown their true colors in a bad and a good way. So
I think people individually are good, fundamentally, I believe.
Yes,
it's groups of people that are the problem. You know, and there's been many scientific studies that show even just something with a little bit of authority a person with a little bit of authority or perceived authority can change the way that they are and inflict great harm on people. Simply putting a white coat on and telling somebody you're in a position of authority, you can convince a person to do something terrible. I forget the name of the experiment, but there was a thing years ago where they got past. They set up an experiment. You can look this up. I forgot the name of it. Where it was an electrician. I can't say that word. Basically, you press a button and it electrocutes a person. That was the scenario. Now, the person who was getting electrocuted wasn't really hooked up to any electricity, but the passers-by that they got to perform the experiment didn't know that. And the person in the lab coat told them, okay, crank up to number 1 and they'll get electrocuted. Crank up to number 2, get electrocuted. And they kept on seeing how far they could take it. Even when they told the person that if they go past a certain point, like say level 6, the person will die and the person is screaming his head off, some people still went past level 6 because they were being told to do it by a person of perceived authority. And that's part of the human condition that causes people to do that. And groupthink is a very dangerous scenario to be in, especially in an SHTF situation, because if you have a small group of people that have very, very narrow views or a particularly charismatic leader, they can be forced into doing things that they otherwise wouldn't do. That's why we see neighbors turning on each other. That's why in civil wars we see people taking sides that you otherwise, I've knew that guy 20 years now, suddenly he's on the other side. And that's the thing to be concerned about. As a survivalists are relatively lone wolfy type thinking people, so I tend to stay away from groups of people. And groupthink is something to me, that's a red flag. Religion of any description to me is a bit of a red flag, because as an individual it's fine, or even a small group it's fine. But religion means you have very rigid rules and around what is and isn't acceptable. And some religions, what they think is acceptable, I would think would be wholly unacceptable. And so I would simply stay clear of those kind of groups.
So what you said just now, that some religions, but is there a good religion?
I think all religions have good in them. I mean, I'm not aware of any particularly bad religions. I'm not aware of a single.
I know where Daryl loves going with this. Easy there, buddy.
I'm not aware of a single religion that's an evil religion and therefore everything they do is bad. I think they all think they're doing something good.
I stand with you 100% on this, by the way, Alan.
But they all have an aspect. There's not a single organized religion that hasn't done bad things, as far as I'm aware.
There's actually many false religions out there today, and true and undefiled religion is to visit widows and orphans in their hour of need. The enemy's done a good job on, what is good and what is bad. Today, the world thinks that bad is good and good is bad, and there's a mix-up. A lot of people, in the meantime, they've got the school run, they've got other things to do in their life, so they don't really look into it. And, they say to you, don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. Yet, what do they talk to us about all the time? When you turn the television on, not that I watch the television, but if you do, it's always religion, wars, politics. Anyway, coming back to the point, pure and undefiled religion is to visit widows and orphans in their hour of need. So there is good religion. And yes, you're very right there, because sadly, there's many false prophets, going to be a lot of deception. And it's dangerous. people, whole community of people committed suicide. There's loads of stories around the world of cults, and yes, you just got to be, you got to know them by their fruits. What are they like beforehand? Yes, and like Guardian said, there's many people that come across, Christians, but many Christians or religious or what have you, and then bam, But yeah, sadly, many Christians will be deceived as well. Many people will be deceived.
People are corruptible. I didn't want to pick particularly on religion, because when I'm talking about groupthink, I'm saying all groups. That could be political groups or gangs or anything like that.
Before, during, and after, a lot of people give money to organisations. Like you're talking about different, even like buying a Mars bar, you're helping Mars, the Mars family. Chef way earlier on mentioned certain people. They don't want us to do certain things anyway.
Yeah, let's get back on topic and off the religious topic, because this is aiming in a different direction than what Shadow really wants to talk about here. So
all I was just saying was that there are good people out there as well.
There's good people, there's bad people. Religion's not really an issue there to be be discussed on this platform. It's not my show. It's Shadow's show. I'm just trying to help the people here on Shadow's show. That's all.
No one's getting religious.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
No one's particularly getting religious. It's just that Alan brought up the subject of watching out for certain people, and even so. Okay, you've picked a non-religious group. Then you've picked a complete other group that you think is totally safe, and it turns out they're satanic. Turns out they're cannibals. There's movies made like that where, oh wow, we found a house and there's an old lady there. She takes the children in her arms. Come and welcome. And then they're there during the evening. They sort of start discovering this very strange place. A mother with her boy.
So we're into story time here. I get it, but we're talking about preserving your preps before, during, and after an event. Really having nothing to do with the two kids that ventured into the woods and found a witch, and the witch fed them, and they left the trail of breadcrumbs and all that. So
we're talking about groups.
I get it. Yeah, groups. If the hair on the back of your neck stands up when you're getting near somebody, you might want to listen to your sixth sense. So, yeah, I'm pretty much. So I'm going to say something that I know Guardian would say, but he hasn't said it yet, and he's going to go, "Damn it, Chef! I was going to say that." The number one way to preserve your preps before, during, and after an event is your health. If you don't have your health, you ain't preserving anything but yourself at that point.
Very good point, Brad.
Point.
That is absolutely.
I noticed something a long time ago that this might just be my this is just my observation. Like everything I say is just my sort of interpretation or something. So, don't take my word for it. But preppers pay very little attention to their own personal health, from what I can see. They spend, based on the videos that I watch about preppers, they spend a long time talking about things, material items. I've got the latest this, I've got all these power banks, I've got all this food, I've got all this kind of stuff. I'm ready for World War III. The Russians are going to take my stuff off me. But you weigh 300 pounds and you're in a wheelchair with diabetes. The Russians aren't going to be your concern. The heart attack that's coming in 2 years' time is this concern. So I think your own health and well-being is critical. Even injury, that's a thing that people take for granted as well. It's all very well and good saying, I'm a particularly fit person, I've got lots of survival skills, I've got all these preps, I can wander off into the woods, I can live off my cash for 30 days. If I trip on the stairs on the way out while I'm bugging out and break my leg, I'm in a world of trouble.
I agree.
I'd love to break glass on this topic quickly, and it's just because Chef Tech definitely puts the bait right out there for me. And I won't go on a tangent, and I could speak about this forever, like this specific topic. I love it to bits, right? I really do. And health, nutrition, just well-being, and community preparedness. That's what I've always, and this is obviously speaking from Guardian Prepping, primarily run my Guardian Prepping channel, but if you ever have time, World Survival, I think you'd be quite intrigued to go over to Guardian Fitness. I've clocked and recorded and documented over 100,000 push-ups over the last year or two, basically. And not just that, but an immense amount of pull-ups, cycling, canoeing, camping, hiking, like all of it is absolutely like so crucial to making sure that you can protect your preps. But I'll say something that's even more important than that, and that's genuinely just being a good person in your community, making friends, not best friends, not trusting everybody, because you need to be so careful out there on who to trust, but also just like being a good person in your community, like enjoying the company of others, looking past things like religion and stuff very easily, like looking past those things on the surface and finding out really who people are and viewing other people as like another version of you. Because essentially, if you really are nice to people, a little bit of a wave, a nice chat, hey, have a good weekend, today's Friday, saying that type of thing to people, just being a positive force in your environment, you essentially are protecting the number one prep, which is community. You're nothing without people, and you can't all of a sudden, when the bomb falls or something, or when the balloon goes up, then want to make best friends with everybody around you. It's too late then. What you have to do is right now, be a good person, and essentially, of course, taking care of your health is like super important. That's why I say, World Survivalist, if you ever have a chance, like definitely, I don't expect you to even watch a full video of mine. It's ultra boring. It's me doing push-ups. I mean, it's the most stupidest content you could ever imagine, but it holds me accountable to what I need to do. And like that is to be as like fit as I possibly can. And push-ups are amazingly good cardio.
Yeah, to add on to that, aside from physical health, mental health, your own mental health, because you're not going to get physically healthy if your mental health is in the toilet, because you're at that point, you're just gonna be like, yeah, I'm going to go buy stuff. I'm going to go prep stuff and all that because I don't have good mental health. I don't think about, every aspect, not of, everything that could possibly happen in the world to be a prepper for, but about myself, about friends, family, nurturing, neighbors, all that stuff. If you don't have that kind of mental health, your physical health, it doesn't really matter. You can be the most fit person in the world, but if you're a jerk to everybody, you ain't going to make it.
Yeah, definitely. We're communal animals. We live in societies. We don't live as individuals. You're and if an SHTF situation takes place, you're not going to be on your own. There's going to be entire communities around about you and family members and stuff that you have to take care of. And just like what Guardian was saying, that's 100% spot on as to, I mean, even when if I go on holiday, my next door neighbor has my phone number and puts my bin out and makes sure nobody prowls around my garden and things like that. That's just a neighborly thing to do. And I do the same thing. And then, should there be a situation where we had to share a little bit of resources or something like that, then that's there. And I think if you do have neighbors that are elderly or disabled or something like that, then you should be willing to provide some assistance to them, and even make preps, even have separate preps purely for them alone, not for yourself. The preps that you're going to be able to give to other people, because one, it's a good resource for them, but it also buys you a little bit of currency and some allies in an SHTF situation. And what Chef's talking about with the mental health aspect of it, a lot of people don't realize that if we're talking about a real SHTF situation, this is the worst period of your life, possibly the worst time for human history, if we're talking about full scale sort of nuclear war or something. For those of us that would still be alive, you're going to have many of your family members or friends aren't alive. You realize your life as it was is now over, and you're in a different world, in a different scenario, and you have to be able to deal with that, because unfortunately, when it comes to large conflicts that take place around the world, something that you see a lot of are suicides, and you see that after conflicts with PTSD and things like that. And so that's something, like Chef was saying, you should really pay attention to. I've been into meditation for a lot of years, just as a way of, I don't have any mental health issues, so I'm lucky that way, but I find that that's a good way of focusing on certain emotional things. So if you're particularly emotional about something, you're scared or you're feeling particularly down, something like practicing meditation is a good way of bringing your mind back into focus as to what it is you have to do.
Hey, Tech Bobby, good to see you, brother.
Hey, Hugo Homestead asked, what's your best way to hide your preps? I just posted a video. It's that can opener that opens a can on the outside rim, and then you can fill it back up. I just used BBs because I had BBs laying around. And I
Yeah.
clean the can out, and then I pour something in there, put the lid back on because it'll sit back on. I use some silicone, turn it upside down, put a weight on there just to let it seal up. It's not for food. But yeah, I do that. And then I made candles like that. I melted a ton of wax, put it in number 10 cans, whole bunch of wicks inside, put a pack of matches in there in a Ziploc bag, and sealed the can back shut. I leave them at my cabin. So if nothing else, I have a 5-wick candle that'll probably burn for weeks if I really wanted it to. But I use cans to restore certain items, and I either take the label off it or I'll leave the label on. You can even dent it a little bit and put some like brown paint on it, dripping down the bottom so it looks like the can leaked. Ain't nobody going to touch that. No label and it's leaking. Yeah, I don't want that. So fun ways to hide stuff in plain sight where people are just like, yeah, ew, what is that? I'm not touching that. You can put some sticky stuff on it so it sticks to the bottom of your cabinet. So when they lift it up, it's like gooey, like maple syrup. And yeah, it's not going to hurt anything. And you know what's in the can. Just don't label it.
I think something else to be said about concealing your preps as well is something that you should pay attention to are things like the smell of cooking, you know, or the smoke. The fuel that you used, is it particularly smoky? You know, I mean, if you're in a situation where food is at a shortage and fuel's at a shortage, and suddenly everybody can smell you cooking up bacon,
Oh yeah.
you know, it's a clear indicator that you have something that it might attract some sort of attention. So
Bob has those little can stoves he makes with all the wood he has hanging up in his shop. He does that. You can go check out one of his videos, and he talks about that. Yeah, you don't want everybody to smell your stuff. You just want to cook it somewhere not close to you, and then put it out and get away and go get it somewhere else.
Something like ethanol or alcohol spirits and stuff are particularly good as well. Cooking with that kind of thing is, you know, there's no smoke, there's very little light, there's no smell. It's very easy to store. So stocking up on things like that's a good idea as well. I actually have some of it here, I think.
You can do the little tuna fish alcohol stove. That's where you take some thin sliced cardboard.
Yeah.
You open the can the way I did in my video. Put some thin sliced cardboard in it. Load it up with alcohol, and then you put the lid back on. Seal it up with silicone. Which you got to watch which silicone you use because alcohol will attack certain silicones. And you have an alcohol stove and I like to use the rip top lids. You know, the new soup cans that come with the pull tab on it. So I cut the pull tab part of the thing off with the can opener that opens on the outside. So when I put it back on, it still has the pull tab intact. So if I need it, I can just rip the pull tab off. I don't need a can opener at that point. I open it. Yes, I'm getting mauled by my pup. He's got another big ball on the floor here and is just beating me up over it. Yeah, buddy burner. That's it.
Yep.
Thanks, Seor. Yep. Thanks, Seor. Okay, I took a strike away.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something to consider when the certain preps that you've got as well, especially if we're talking about food. What kind of fuel do you also need in order to prepare these? Are they heavily, you know, is it something, you know, try to figure something like lentils. Lentils requires a bit of preparation. You need to soak them and all this kind of stuff, and there's cooking involved with rice and things like that. Preps that you can readily eat cold as they are probably an easier go-to in the SHTF situations. And the kind of talking about other, you know, cooking methods, something that you know, I use gas and things like that a lot as well. Something like you know, these little MSR type stoves and things like that. They're incredibly good. The problem with these is they're very, very noisy. So when I light this up in the woods, you know, if I was trying to stay relatively concealed or something, you know, you hear that a mile away. It's bloody loud. It sounds like a jet engine, you know, in the woods anyway. So that's something to think about as well. I think that's maybe not so much, but just the fuel that you have that you're prepping also goes hand in hand with the food that you have. And if you have a wood burning stove, what kind of quality of wood do you have? Because if you've got wood that's pumping out a lot of smoke and you can smell it from miles away, and there's a shortage of fuel like wood or heat, you're literally just putting up smoke signals to say, here I am, I have a wood burning stove right here, and I have wood.
And
I think
then
I'm going to make a short
it
video
depends
about
on what.
one of those alcohol stoves now. Got my own brain thinking like, I think I should do that, and then put like some little pieces of metal, something I can use for like a little stand on top of the can to cook on, but put it inside the can with the alcohol and the cardboard or whatever cotton to and then seal it back up again, so I can literally, it's a ready to go little mini stove and probably get a couple hours of cooking time off of it, or at least heating water up.
See, this comes apart from this on these. You can make these are actually quite easy to make. You can make them from cans and things like this. These ones are particularly good. This is an American company. This is Dave Canterbury's company that made this one. But this fits on top of here, and then it becomes a very easy way to put a pot, or a cup. That actually fits perfectly. The metal canteen and the metal cup that he also sells separately on his site. I love his products. They're very high quality stainless steel, made in America, so they're a bit expensive for me to buy, but I still get them. And this holds quite a lot of fuel in there as well. That's and you can regulate it using these lids. The lid is regulatable as well.
That's an alcohol stove, right?
It's an alcohol stove, yeah, and I use that in conjunction with that liquid firelighter fuel, which is scentless. It doesn't put out a lot of light. There's no smoke. It's very clean. You can even use it indoors. It's actually used. That fuel is used for if you've ever seen these fancy fireplaces that you get on patio tables where they have like a fire with fancy rocks and stuff, and it gives off a nice light.
Yeah, with the extra vent holes, it's a smokeless.
Yeah. It's a smokeless fire pit, yeah, exactly. But it makes a fantastic alcohol fuel stove, which is a lot cleaner than a lot of the camping type stuff that you get. And this works in conjunction with a lot of other stuff as well. It takes longer to boil things. It's mostly boiling you're doing this with. You're not cooking with these. You're boiling water mostly.
Right.
And it takes a long time.
Oh, yeah.
The gas will, in a minute you're done. This may take 3 or 4 minutes, but you get a very long time out of these.
You can't refill those cylinders.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. You can store a lot of that fuel, that liquid fuel. It's very easy to store and safe. Whereas these, they run out. They're more expensive, and you can get the fuel out. There's a regulator you can buy with these. So once it's down to like halfway, you can actually transfer one gas stove to another gas stove. But it's fiddly. I've tried it before. It's a pain in the arse. These little fuel stoves are just fantastic.
I think those are multi-fuel too. It's not just alcohol. I think you can do kerosene. You don't want to do gasoline. That blows up.
Yeah, you can put. We were talking about alcohol earlier on. If you have a high enough proof alcohol, you could even use this really good quality whiskey or vodka. To
It might give off a little bit of an odor, but
it would give off a bit of an odor. But
the alcoholics are going to be coming at find you because they're going to smell alcohol burning. Going, I smell whiskey. Where's the whiskey?
Yeah. And well, use booze as for your stove to cook food. Well, the good thing with that alcohol is you can store as much as you want, no regulations. But if you're going to store those gas cans, there is regulations on how much you can store at your home. So
yeah. I mean, plus also, if you've got them in a concealed place, for example, so let's say you've got a basement, I would feel safer storing several containers of this liquid than I would having several gas canisters.
You don't want to store gas indoors because when gas vapors come out, they sit low, and if you have anything that's a flame, like a water heater or something like that, that's low to the ground, if those fuel vapors build up and get high enough, sort of like pouring water into oil, the water sinks to the bottom, the oil floats to the top. That's the oxygen that floats to the top. The gas vapors float to the bottom. It gets up high enough, you'll blow your house up. So I would never suggest storing gasoline in a house ever,
Yeah.
unless it's a detached garage. But even then, it'd be in a shed. I keep my gas for my lawnmowers and stuff out in my shed where it's well vented. I mean, if something leaks in there, and I walk in there every now and then, I smell it because of the heat. But all those vapors just fall out the bottom and into the environment and dissipate real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it goes for generators as well, actually. The noise, the smell, those are things you have to take into consideration when you're protecting your preps. Especially if all the lights are out and everybody's desperate for electricity and you're the only guy in town with every light in your house on, people are going to want to know how the hell how are you doing that, and why are you not sharing? Why are you not sharing some of this fuel and generator power or
share the electricity? My freezer's dead. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I might even, if there was a long-term power outage and I had some power banks pre-powered, I would consider simply purely one for the sake of saving the energy, but also trying to stay a little bit stealthy. Power up the thing that you need, the freezer or the fridge or whatever, and then just use candles. Don't use lights.
No.
Yeah.
So what's funny is
a tiny light, and make sure your windows are blacked out.
Yeah, what's kind of funny is that because of our power outages for like 3 decades of power outages, so there are so many people here that have solar power up and have backup generators that when we do go out without power, like the majority of even the lower class areas as well, lower class to medium class to high class, like pretty much like all different classes of society have, and we do have those class boundaries here. Definitely there are, unfortunately, and we are trying to fix them. But for the most part, there are so many people with generators that even during like blackouts and load shedding and that as well, like there's a large amount of people with power on.
Yeah.
I think wood burning stoves have started becoming quite popular in the UK, and it's interesting because the UK probably has one of the highest energy prices in the world. If I was to tell you guys my electricity and gas bill, you'd probably be horrified, and so that's a reason why a lot of people are moving over to wood burning stoves. And I'll tell you this is something that you might find quite incredible. Despite the fact that the UK has the highest energy bills probably in the world, I'm sure of it, and wood burning stoves are something that are a very easy economical thing that anybody can install in their household.
Yeah.
The government in the UK, especially in some of the more devolved parts of the UK, like in Scotland, want to make them illegal. They actually want to outlaw wood burning stoves, so that
they want
nobody
to buy their electric. Yeah,
they want you to keep buying their gas and electric because they realise that there's no tax revenue, wood burning stoves, and of course their spin on it is, well, it's for carbon zero purposes. We don't want people burning wood. We'd rather that we were burning our coal to power the power stations for you to buy the extraordinarily expensive energy from us.
I remember seeing some pictures and videos last winter from the UK where people were setting up their own little tiny wood burning stoves in apartments, houses, and that, and literally going out to the park with a battery powered sawzall and taking the wood off the park benches. They were cutting everything down that wasn't if it was bolted down, they cut it and took it home to burn it. And they couldn't figure out, well, where did the park bench go? Well, let's see, you raise the prices so bad, people are freezing to death. Yeah, they'll do anything to get some wood to burn, including burning their own furniture and stuff in the park. If it's wood, it's gone.
Yeah, I mean the average household bill in the UK for combined gas and electricity for just a normal sort of, say, 2-3 bedroom house is about I think it's between £2,500 and £3,500 a year.
Holy smoke!
Yeah, it's got crazy.
That's expensive.
Yeah, I pay nearly £250-300 a month. I have a 3-bedroom house. I'm not living in a mansion, and there's 2 of us in this house and a child, so we don't use a lot of electricity. To be fair, I might use a little bit more than the average person. I've got lots of computers and equipment and stuff that I run, but we don't have air conditioning running all the time and unnecessary appliances, and it's still quite expensive here.
Yeah, we're too conditioned to the comfort, electricity, gas. It's going to be a big shock to people. A lot of people that went to the frontiers of, let's say, USA, they never just went there and just put a fire together and went hunting and survived. Many people died because they didn't actually know how to survive. So, you know, in them situations, you might just get one shot and you're dead. And you know, there's a lot of stories where people actually did crazy things to stay warm, crazy things to build kind of shelters, but then they sort of discovered how to build the right type of shelter because people had fires indoors in a cave and then they died because they came overcome by smoke, or in some cases people became, you know, set themselves on fire being too close. They had these methods of making fires underneath them, and many people burnt to death. So, you know, surviving is not, and us lot, we're going, yeah, we're just going to go in the forest, or we're just going to do this, or we're just going to do that. It's going to come to, people are going to get a big shock, you know, and there's all this stuff about good people. Sorry, there's no good people out there. We want to be good. We'd like to be good. It's easy to talk about being good in a situation when we've got electric, gas, comfort, a nice little podcast to sit down and talk about being nice and all cushy. But the reality is, we're going to be like those people that first discovered a situation like a kind of a, it's going to be like a new frontier. Okay, you might be thinking, Costa, why are you getting so drastic? You know, it's not, you're going on about, are you going on about the end of the world again? And I'm just being real. I'm thinking, well, and like we say, who can prepare for a specific disaster? We don't know. So anything's open. So the point is, if you look at stories in the first US in America, there's even stories where people were peeing on each other to stay warm. There's stories of people getting naked, 10 man in a group in a tent. Will take rotating. Who's coldest go in the middle. You know, these things, and then they had to experiment. Many people died in the winter times. I know it's serious stuff. You know, I mean, you know, us lot, we're thinking, yeah, we've got a little power bank, a little wood stove, a little this, a little that, or even our knowledge. What is our knowledge? We haven't been to that frontier yet.
I think people inherently are good, and it is a debatable point of view, and I get that.
It's in them, but sadly, most of them have chosen to give the power to the actual enemy. That's why we're in this situation now. Because okay, so where is the agreement? Where is the agreement then? Where's the agreement with people?
I think the fact that
there's a few people like you, Guardian. It's not lots of people.
No, I think there's more of us than you'd imagine that want to see the world prosper and that want to have, like,
they want to be good. They want to be good. Yes, they want to be good.
The fundamental three things that people genuinely want is people want safety. Inherently, people want safety. People want to be able to have subsistence, so they want to be able to have food and nourishment. And people, thirdly, just want community, whether people believe that or not. And of course, it is extremely difficult because of the society that we live in and because of the way that the media kind of always just points us to, you know, aggravate us and make us believe that we can't trust each other. That's the great big lie, the belief that we all are, you know, genuinely when it comes down to person on an individual level. You know, we were speaking about it earlier where groups can sometimes be a problem. Groups, when people do get into groups, and this is also part of protecting your preps and that as well, staying on point, of course. But I think that when it comes down to where we're looking at how people genuinely are from person to person, I know that there are a large amount of criminals in the world, and there's a lot of things that go bad. There's a lot of people that do heinous acts to one another, and a lot of people that are selfish, and there's greed, and there's jealousy, and there's all of those terrible things. And I'm a sinner.
We're all sinners. We're all making mistakes some way. Right. Sorry.
No, that's true.
We're all sinners. We've all done something wrong, and we're still going to fall again maybe next week or tomorrow. You know, we pick ourselves up again and try and make ourselves better each day. We try.
But that's my point, though, is that I would rather believe, I would rather believe in people and give them a chance than believe that most people are negative and want ill for one another, because even just the society that we live in today and the fact that it's even able to exist in the way that it does means that people aren't running out there and being complete like savages consistently. Sure, there's the exceptions with crime, and I'm speaking from like a very, very much, prominent criminal like run country when it comes to how badly our crime rates are, and because of because of unemployment is a big factor to that as well, and there's a lot of reasons. I cannot explain to you, and I could sit here and speak to you for a while about how many different situations I've been in where I've been the victim of crime in many, 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 many ways, I promise you. But I am telling you absolutely that even though that is the case, I still choose to believe that people will band together, and people will don't trust anybody at first at all, but you cannot be friends with anybody if there isn't even an iota of trust at all. So that's the problem.
Yeah. Trust is a big thing, yeah. But I guess you can know them by their fruits. I mean, what if you maybe start making a note around who's okay around you, what people think, make notes of people, make notes of people that are like-minded, someone who's into prepping, like Shadow. Shadow's given us a great sort of place to sort of have a chat, have a talk about it. It reminds me of the Greeks. The Greeks used to have whole colosseums, massive stadiums where people used to just go and talk. Like, there'd be a group over there. There's like a bit of a speaker's corner. And, everyone, so we're having a great conversation, and we're sharing our experiences and our things that we've learned. And of course, I always look to see the best in people. I try to smile at everybody. I made a video recently as well talking about, I'm trying to spread this smiler virus. And I'm trying to get everybody to smile. It's like, contagious, but we're living in a sort of a weird world, where you got people that try to stand up for peace, and next minute they're getting shot.
Yeah, we all grew up in different environments. I mean,
like Bob Marley, a simple person like Bob Marley, like singing songs, like they assassinated him. So, what It's actually a sort of deep one, Guardian guys. A very deep one here. Trusting who to trust in a group, because you're talking about your whole prep. Say your preps, your wife, your dog, your cat, your birdie, your group, and all right, yeah, come here, it's safe here. Come there, it's safe there. Come here, it's safe there. Where do you choose? Where do you go? Is it really going to? And also the system. Are they going to clean up after the ones that haven't died? Are they going to come and sort of say, right, you can't be hanging around out there? And you're like, you've got your cave, you've got your little kitchen section, you've got your little, grow plants over there. And they're saying, no, you can't be here. And you're like, what? What do you mean? It's the end of the world. We're surviving. What?
I mean, the order does eventually come out of chaos. That's always been the case in all situations. The problem with bad people just kind of go.
It depends on, are you sort of defending people that sort of create the chaos?
Well, I'm saying that an order will eventually come out of it.
Let Alan talk for a minute here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just pointing out the fact that eventually an order will form itself, because as human beings, we are society driven. We're a community. We're a social animal. We're not designed to be running around in mobs and attacking each other and doing bad things all the time. The problem is that the kind of people who, criminals and things like that, are a minority, but they have an outsized impact on society. That's why we notice them more. If you live in a neighborhood that has a serious gang problem, for example, and the place is just absolute chaos, there's crime going on all the time, you'll probably find that neighborhood has got 100,000 people living in it. And the gangs that are doing all of that maybe number in 500 or 600 people. It's tiny. And but eventually, I mean, if the whole world was to go to hell tomorrow, there would be absolute chaos and people would take advantage, because that's how people survive. And then desperate people would do desperate things in order to survive. Eventually, though, out of all of that chaos, an order would form. And society would form, and leaders would come to the top, and people would follow them, because ultimately, not everybody wants to be a leader. People want to be told and follow, and they want to follow. That's kind of how things work, and societies would form. The Wild West. If you watch Wild West films, you would be forgiven for believing that everybody was walking around as a gunslinger. Well, how could they be? Society would never work if that was the case. Or what about the Vikings? If everybody in Norway and Sweden was just a war-torn maniac, how did anything ever get built? How did they ever build houses? How did they ever build ships? Were there any craftsmen? Was there any art? Of course there was. It's just we don't hear about that. It's only the small things with the outsized voice that we hear about. And it's just the same as being victims of crime. I mean, I've been a victim of crime before, and it's easy for me to say, well, I've been a victim of crime twice in my life, therefore people are terrible. Well, I'm 41 years old. That means I've went through at least 40 years of life not being a victim of crime.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we all grow up with our own experiences. I mean, Alan lives where he lives now. How many different places has he lived in, military stuff like that? I don't know. It doesn't really matter. We all base our theories on what we have experienced in our lives. I've lived in 4 different states in my entire life, all on the East Coast, north of DC. Let's just leave it at that. And I have different experiences in Maine and in New Jersey and in Maryland and Pennsylvania. I have different experiences with different people in all those places. And those experiences have brought me to understand what I think is correct for me. Now, I've never lived in California. I've never lived in Sweden, South Africa. Everybody lives where they live. And that's what their life experiences are based on in terms of how we are going to react or how we are currently reacting right this second to a particular topic. It's all based on what you have experienced in life. Some have had nothing but miserable, terrible experiences for half their life. Other ones have only had minor ones. Alan's been, brutalized or robbed or whatever a couple times. I've been robbed a couple times. My wife's been robbed a couple times. We have our experiences. We know what happened, why it may have happened, and we just go with that. But I don't try to tell the whole world, you must do what I'm doing because of my life experiences. You all live in different parts of the world. We all live in different parts of the world here. I mean, everybody but me is over in the European side in Asia and Africa. I'm the only one right now, except for Bob, and he's off right now. And I got CR listening in on the corner. And we live in North America. So, but the three of us have completely different experiences on different parts of the continent. So you can't just justify everybody should do this because of what I believe. I'm going to justify what I'm doing because of my experiences here, not what what Alan's dealing with over there, or what Shadow's dealing with there, or Darilov's dealing with over there, or anybody. It doesn't matter. I'm worried about me and my family and what's close to me. So I'm just trying to keep us back on track a little bit here of we can all throw our 2 cents worth out there. That's fine. I'm not going to go on for 25 minutes and rob the mic on somebody else's channel, but that's just the way it is. We all have different lives. We all experience different things, and we are all going to prep the way we want to prep, not the way somebody else tells us to or we think might happen. Sorry, I'll get off my soap. I have to go get my food grinder. I'll be right back.
No, you're good. You are absolutely right. I will say that there are similarities, though, of course. There are a couple of good similarities, and that's where we can actually learn from each other because of those similarities. But it definitely does come down to being an extremely different dynamic for each of us. And that's why I think that these panels on Saturdays, it's also the reason why I'm always willing to, just drop in and see what the conversation's about and how it's going, because it's quite intriguing. And I have got quite a limited amount of time as well in terms of what I do day to day. I try to be extremely busy, and I try to be busy because I think it's a good thing to try and keep your mind busy and to try and be an active person as well. And somebody that actually is a very kind of helpful member of society as much as I possibly can in many ways. And I'm not going to let my left hand know what my right hand does. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you guys what I do on a day-to-day basis. But it definitely comes down to being willing to, make a difference wherever you are and wherever you are in the world, in fact. And I think that on my side, I've definitely learned from the place where I'm coming from. And I think that each of us in our own regions, I think that obviously as well, World Survivalist, Darilov, Shadow, and yourself as well. I don't know if you're back yet as well, Chef, but I think that each of those definitely, kind of in the combination of all of them as well, it definitely comes together nicely when we're able to share some specific thoughts and experiences and ideas as well. But ultimately, we're dealing with human nature, and I think that when it comes to protecting preps, people will be the biggest threat that you come across. So yeah, it's just
it is quite interesting to make sure that you're just learning and that you're always willing to grow and that you're always willing to like kind of have enough introspection to realize that you can also be wrong. And I've got to do that consistently to like learn, you know, to realize that there are lessons that I still need to learn and that I don't know everything by any shot. It's like the more that I learn in life, the more I realize how little I actually know. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. I learn something every
Yeah.
time I come on this panel. One of the great things about your channel here, Shadow, is the diversity of opinion. And you know, as this channel gets bigger, you know, a few years from now, when this is a much bigger channel, hopefully there'll be even more diverse people from like maybe China and India and these kind of parts of the world talking about their preps and their worldview, because that would be fantastically interesting. I mean, all of, like Guardian was saying, we all come from, you know, somewhat different parts of the world, but we're all kind of, they're all westernized worlds, really. I mean, Europe, America, South Africa are very Western type places to a lot of extent. I'd love to see a Russian point of view or a Chinese point of view or a Japanese point of view on prepping. That would be amazing. And I think that will happen on this channel at one point, because it's so open to just having people come on and rant for a little while, which is very unique. I mean, there's not many other stations like this that allows this to happen. So yeah, well done there, Shadow, for making that happen at least.
True.
Yeah, that's the point, and that's my goal, that we share our opinions on this topic and on different other kind of topics about prepping and preparedness and things like that. That is my goal, that everybody can put out their opinions and their experience and their ideas. That's the point with it. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it.
The thing is, it's such a broad topic as well. I know we have a topic to talk about, and because this is like a 4-hour podcast, we famously go off topic into other things and then come back to things. But I mean, the reason for that is because it's just so broad. There's just so much to all of the topics. It's hard to narrow it down to what's the best thing to do to protect my preps. Well, it depends where you are. It depends who you are. It depends who you know. It depends who the guy next door to you is. It depends what situation you're in. It depends what time of year it is. It depends what the weather's like. I mean, it just goes on forever. Yeah. And it's so hard to boil all that down and to do these 10 things. It's almost like an art than a science, this kind of topic. I mean, that's especially the case for things like survival and prepping, which they're interlinked disciplines. They're the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's wild how far you can go off topic from one thing to the other. I mean, we could narrow it down specifically to certain aspects, but you know, ultimately, as like Guardian was alluding to earlier, we live in societies, we live in communities, and that's what we have to really stay focused on, because there's not a lot of point of imagining you're living in a Mad Max type scenario and you're the road warrior, you and your dog, because that's not the most likely scenario to be in. You're going to be dealing with your neighbors who haven't got a bloody clue about prepping or survival, but they're also not murderers or mass criminals. They're normal people trying to get by, and they're trying to get through those 3 aspects of life that Guardian was talking about. And the way I view it is, I consider myself to be a good person. You know, I'm not a criminal. I don't harm people. I try to be kind to animals, even though I am a hunter. I do that appropriately and for reasons. And I think most people are like me. You know, in an SHTF situation, I assume the worst about a person initially until I can evaluate them and get to know them a little bit and, you know, see what the red flags are to my mind. And eventually, if it's apparent to me that this person is just another person and we can get along, well, then that's another resource that we can share, because societies work better than individuals. That's 100% true. Always.
I wonder how long it'll take for some societies to actually establish themselves after, because obviously throughout what we've been speaking about, you know, protecting your preps and that as well is extremely important. But I think that it's equally as important to just analyze what that initial phase would look like, because depending on what the severity is of any particular situation that could occur, I think that if we did kind of lose the access and capability to go online and to, converse in the way that we are. And there's a couple of ways that the more that I look into certain SHTF on a technological front of how badly that could go and how quickly it could go. Because just a little bit of frame of reference, and I won't go into too much of a tangent about it, even though it's such a deep topic to get into. But obviously the largest corporations in the world are consistently spending an enormous amount of wealth on cybersecurity for their own firms and for the protection of their clients. But what is consistently happening on a daily basis is, if you look up the amount of money that's being stolen online every single day, it's phenomenal. And it's just that to realize that is the situation that's occurring. And not only that, but there are big sites like Google that even get impacted in that as well, that'll go down temporarily. And all it takes is and perhaps with the addition of artificial intelligence as well that's coming along side for certain people to do these kind of heinous acts online, to make sure that there can be those kind of dips in like the internet in general. I think that those things could potentially cause down the road, it could get a lot easier for the type of situations to occur where we lose the capability to go online and to speak about these type of things amongst each other, and also use the resources that we have like Google Earth and that as well, to understand our regions like as much as we possibly can. I think that people don't do that often enough, where they'll genuinely just go onto Google Earth and you can really look and study and see exactly where you are and the mountain regions around you, and just spend some time with it. Like play around with like Google Earth for a while, actually get used to your region when it comes to like some of the mountain regions, and then go like hiking and camping and actually like expose yourself to some of those. And I think that once that's been done, and once you can kind of understand and point out different spots, and that's when you can really start your caching systems. You should have like several caches, not too many, but like several caches that are actually really valuable. And that's a good way to protect your preps as well within that. So what I'm saying is that through, I know I'm going off on a tangent with it, sorry for doing so, but when it comes down to the main point that I'm trying to make, is that losing the capability to have the internet and for us to be able to communicate like this is potentially one of those things that could occur. And if that does occur, then what you should try and do is, in the meantime, make sure that the community that you're around you gets more, has more rigidity to actually take on any survival situations or any SHTF situations that happen, by being a lot more self-reliant. And you do so by recommending that they try and plant more fruit trees, more food forests as well, establish food forests within your neighborhood. Try and get people to start thinking that way already, so that if things do really go bad and we do lose capability of the internet, that we can be pretty much self-sufficient within our communities.
Yeah, and the other thing is the younger generations. They grow up with the internet and everything like that, and computers. They grow up with it. Compared to me, when I was a kid, there were no computers. So, though the younger generations will handle when their power goes down for a long term, they cannot handle it because they are not used to it. They are not used to be without their computer and phones and things like that. So
yeah, it's definitely a case of trying to get them more involved with the old ways of doing things.
Yeah,
it's something I try. I've got one son. He's 8 years old, and he's obsessed with Fortnite and video games and things like that at the moment.
Yeah,
I have to really encourage him to come camping with me and go out and do things. And when he's there, he loves it. He enjoys it. Children have to be exposed to this stuff. They don't just automatically out of nowhere decide, you know what, I'm going to put down my PlayStation controller and I want to go out into the woods for a day. They just won't do it. They would rather sit on the sofa. But what I've noticed taking him outdoors and having him set fires and sleep in hammocks and things like that. They love it because it's natural. Being in the woods is natural. It's natural to all people. It's natural to all humans, especially to boys, I think. That kind of survival aspect of it. And the more we can introduce younger people involved in that, whether it be in scout groups or whatever as well, those are all good things, all good in community groups. It's another great way of hoarding. One of the best way to protect your preps is to make sure the generation below you knows everything about it as well.
I agree. I definitely agree with you about that one.
They're protecting their own preps as well as you.
When I was a kid, we didn't have mobile phones or computers. We were outdoors most of the time. It didn't. My mom, if it was raining, cats and dogs, my parents said, "Go out, no matter what." Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine being indoors. I mean, it was for me. Being punished was being told to stay indoors. That was punishment.
Yeah.
You can't go outdoors for the next 3 days. You're grounded.
And me and my dad and my uncle and my cousins, we were canoeing every summer when I was a kid for a week. So that was fun. We learned a lot of things from that.
Yeah, it's those times that you'll always remember. I definitely agree on that as well. And I think that in grade 7, so standard 5 at the time, we used standards back then. But in standard 5, what we were doing is our maths teacher would take us between first break and second break. And he'd take us, we were actually quite close to like a little reserve. And he'd take us just for a walk. And even though like it's such a small thing, like that's actually what like really sparked my interest in the outdoors and camping and survival and like everything from there. Just like, the willingness. CR, welcome to the panel.
Hello.
It's those things that we remember. How are you doing, CR? You good?
No, keep talking. I'm just don't listen.
No, I was just saying it's lovely experiences, and the things that are young sometimes shape us, and just like being somebody that can be in the opportunity, like have the opportunity to be like a team leader or like an adult supervisor at any time. Or guardian has the capability to really, even if you're just like teaching or instructing, you have the capability to really shape a person's like entire life if you provide them with the opportunities and make the next generation so much more capable. And I think that we do underestimate the capabilities that some of these the youngsters have that are where they'll be like stuck to their screens for a certain amount of time. When it comes down to SHTF, kids are extremely adaptable. And they can change really quickly, and they'll definitely surprise a lot of people when it comes to like the capability, that instinctual capability to like survive as well, and to be like, human beings are amazing and remarkable when it comes to survival. Even people like surprise themselves consistently when it comes down to it. So I do think that it is a problem with the screen time, and that's why I limit, as a dad, I definitely limit the screen time here at home. To a moderate amount as well, so that like your kids need to know how to use technology, but not to the point that they lose interest in actually living and being outside. And just as a personal thing, and I'll get off the soapbox here in a minute, but my little 3-year-old daughter can like hang on a pull-up bar she's like just recently broken her record, I think yesterday, like 36 seconds now, just like hanging on a pull-up bar, which isn't a big thing to most people and stuff as well, but getting like the youth and getting like the youngsters like more capable and stronger and fitter and getting like they're more ready for anything that could happen is extremely important for us to do so.
Yeah, I definitely feel your struggle about trying to limit the screen time and stuff. It's an ongoing battle I've got at the moment trying to pull them away.
That was my phone. Sorry about that.
I figured.
It just came in at the perfect time, speaking about screen time, and then your phone rang.
He planned it.
How's your weekend going, CR? What's your
hello? Mark?
Give us input.
Thrill? GP?
Hello?
A great person? Bacon dude?
Yeah, I'm still here. I was just grinding 10 pounds of semi-frozen boneless, skinless chicken breast
Hey,
to
Warren,
rebag up
good
there.
to see you.
Chef Tech is the only person who actually does something practical in these conversations. He's actually doing something prepper related. I'm sitting here drinking beer, Leo, just
I'm just
giving my
looking at
10
a
cents.
screen. I'm just looking at a screen and
It
eating.
is kind of the middle of the day for me here, and I'm like, yeah, I got things to do.
Yeah.
Crap, shadows on. All right, but the computer is literally sitting on my toaster next to the microwave. I don't have the camera on because I can't really show what I'm doing without me in it and all that stuff. So, but
We can hear it, though.
I'm grinding up chicken that I got really cheap, and it goes in 1 pound bag back in a freezer, frozen, and we use that ground chicken for all kinds of recipes and stuff.
It's funny you say you've been grinding chicken. I've been grinding some chicken in my mouth just now in the sandwich. Chicken breast sandwich, actually.
There you go.
You can hear the sizzling. You can hear the sizzling at the back there by your chef, and it sounds fantastic.
No, that's actually
it sounds delicious.
That's me wasting water. Sorry.
I should have ate more. I knew I should have ate more.
Something.
I should have ate more. I was eating a snack.
You're hungry.
I was eating a snack. That's why I was away. I had to charge my device too. So, and
Actually,
water some plants.
See, something I just remembered there. Actually, what Guardian was talking about. I think it was you that was talking about Google Maps and the utility of Google Maps.
Yes, sir.
Did anybody watch the video the Canadian Prepper, that big YouTube channel? He did a video about using Google Maps. I think it was something like Useful Maps or something was the title of his video. I'd actually recommend people watch that video. It's very insightful. And he was talking about lots of things that Google Maps can do, like tell not just the topography of the area that you live in, but there's lots of other maps as well that tell you about the growing environment of your specific place or places you're likely to bug out to. So if you're talking about putting preps in a place, you need to know what's the general environment in that area. Is the soil good enough that you can grow in? What's the solar? What kind of solar does it receive? What kind of wind does it receive? Is it on a floodplain? Has it changed over the past 20 years, etc.? And he actually lays out lots of different maps that give you this information. I watched that last night, and I was very impressed by how useful that would actually be, especially if you're somebody who's thinking about buying a homestead or moving location or moving house or something like that.
No, it's good. There's a lot of brilliant information from Canadian Prepper. He's actually done a psychology on survival and preparedness. Canadian Prepper used to do a lot of videos like that. This was about a decade ago, and I really, really loved those. And every now and again, I also check out some of those bigger prepper and survival channels. They've got some really good content up there as well. So it is something that I'll definitely look into. Even if you can drop us. I don't know if you can find it. I mean, it'll be easy for me to find as well. I'll just go into Nate's channel and just check out his last couple of videos. It'll probably be there as well.
Yeah. I think I'm probably subscribed to your channel. If I try and every time I come on a panel like this, I do a couple of these kind of things, and every single person I speak to, I immediately subscribe to their channel because they're always interesting people. I always want to see what they do and what they get up to. So I'm probably already subscribed to your channel. If I'm not Guardian, I will be. By the time we finish here, and I'll drop you a link and things like I'm sure I've subbed you as well. I must have done by now.
I haven't looked in a while. I haven't posted much.
But yeah, I mean the bigger channels like Canadian Prepper. I was a fan of a lot of the stuff he does as well. I don't watch all of his stuff because the DX stuff is a bit depressing for me.
Yeah, I actually got in an argument with him about 8 years ago, before he started getting all commercialized and that. And I don't remember what it was about, but I said, now I'm done here. And his closing remarks was, you'll be back. I'm like, the hell I will. I unsubbed from him. And every now and then something pops up on my feed. I look, I'm like, yeah, this is why I unsubbed to you, because you're just doing nothing but spreading fear porn right now about it's the end of the world again.
Every now and again, there's something useful there. He's also, funnily enough, he's actually my biggest subscriber. You can see people who subscribe to your own channel, and he's the biggest person on the internet that subscribes to me.
I said years ago I unsubbed. He's been on other channels that I watch up in the Canada area up there. Another guy that built I forget what it's called, but he basically built his whole farm out in the middle of nowhere, big solar type greenhouse, which is like huge. He does his own thing. I watched him, and he's kind of getting. I mean, credit to them. They're all getting monetized in that with Vivor and whoever. And that's fine. I have no issues with that. But when they spend a half hour of a 1 hour video talking about their Vivor stuff, it's like, yeah, dude, I get it. But you know what? I didn't come here to learn about, the little Vivor block and tackle that they lent you to try out and test, and you spend a whole video doing that. It's like, great, it's a block and tackle that Vivor made. Okay,
that's
gotcha.
the dangers of YouTube, unfortunately. It's
Yeah.
The bigger you get, the more susceptible you are to that kind of
And
stuff.
if you don't get a sponsor, YouTube doesn't pay you. So,
It's hard
there's
to
that
blame
too.
them.
That's why I'm not really.
YouTube's never paid me.
Retire.
So getting back on
Yeah,
topic.
they're not going to pay me anytime soon either.
So getting back on topic again. I'm pulling a mark here. Getting back on topic here. I just showed up. You guys are. I do have a few things to elaborate on and say about this topic.
Go ahead, CR.
Like, because I know we talked about the spiritual aspect, the mind, the body, right? Yes, obviously you want to, protect that stuff and, be positive, be in decent shape, right? For what it is, because injuries will slow you down. You can't do much when you're injured. You're slower, right? You get a sprain wrist, can't lift that much. You get a sprained ankle, you can't walk that far or lift that much, right? You get a bad knee, bad back. I know Nicole was in here earlier, right? You can't do so much, right? Because you're less capable and stuff like that. So trying to make sure that you kind of protect yourself whenever possible, especially if you're doing activities or something like welding, building something, right? So like the physical protection that people wear, like hard hats, eye protection, ear protection, right? In terms of like that stuff too, right? Because once that's gone, you're less capable. If you can't see, you can't hear, you're less capable. You're not to be able to hear those birds or someone coming, right? You're not able to see someone coming if you're like got something in your eye because you were just doing something with wood or whatever, right? And all that stuff. So like keep that in mind, right? Because that's why I always, when I see people putting on the ear protection or something like that, like I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it, right? Because like if it goes, you're less capable and stuff like that. So that's always something like I'm like, yeah, I'll go grab the ear protection for you. Right? It's not a big deal. I totally get it, right? Like even for me, when I'm working with power tools, and I mean it's one thing if you're just sawing something really quick, but if you're doing it for like minutes or like 5-10 minutes and a lot of it, yeah, you probably should put some protection on it in time, right? Especially if you're like grinding something or whatever, right? Like a full face shield or welding or whatever, right? I imagine Bob would probably has equipment like that too. If he's welding, like you don't have to. It's just a given, right? You don't want to ruin your sight. Or usually the reason I do it is so I don't actually damage my glasses that I wear, right? I don't want to get stuff over my glasses that I can't see so well afterwards and stuff like that, right? So I wanted to say that first and foremost because I think that's important. Because a lot of the time the injuries that happen is because things happen, right? I mean, like you fall, you slip on ice in the winter or whatever, right? All this stuff, like people that play sports, right? That's why they get that equipment. If you think about baseball, hockey, football, all those, the shin guards and all that stuff, right? Because it kind of sucks when something happens. It kind of sucks, and you'll be grateful when you have it, right? Someone sticks in your visor, and that could have been your face or your eye, right? Easily, right? And you'll regret it afterwards, right? So in hindsight, a little forethought goes a long way, right? In terms of that kind of stuff, especially if you think about it in terms of like certain situations about like protective gear, like specifically like it's like a life preserver, a vest of some sort, right? When you're out on the lake, on a river and stuff like that, right? A safety jacket of some sort, right? Yeah, that is a form of protection too, right? You know,
It is, yeah.
this is before too, or while you're doing it, right? Because afterwards, you'll regret it, or worse, right? Because, you know, and stuff like that, and that happens all the time, right? People regret. It's like, I'm just like 5 feet away, right? Well, or whatever, right? And the next thing you know, this, you know, rip current comes in and or whatever, and then you're like trying to like swim back, right, and keep yourself afloat, right? Where you're like, I should have brought the vest with me. It would be a lot easier, right? You know, because you wouldn't be exerting so much effort trying to stay afloat, for example, right? Or little things like how I see it as where you're protecting yourself against the elements themselves, right? Like I know we were talking. Well, remember
you said something a second ago. You said if I'm only cutting one little piece of wood, I'm okay without safety glasses. No,
oh, okay.
No,
I mean, I'm just saying, like, you know,
my hands are full of raw chicken. I couldn't hit the microphone fast enough, but it's been stewing on me. 99% of accidents happen in the home or within a mile of your home, and they happen usually within the first minute of doing something that you may have had some kind of protective device to do. So keeping your personal safety in mind, I mean, that's another huge topic we can get into someday, Jaron. But, you know, personal safety and crap hit the fan. But I think we did that already. But, I mean, yeah, no. If you have safety glasses and you're going to cut one little piece of wood, yeah, go find your safety glasses, because that 30 seconds of putting them on is going to save you a lifetime of misery. Sorry, I was a safety guy.
Yeah, no, I get it.
For years, and I heard this stuff all the time. Like, dude, I don't care if you're only touching it with the grinder for a second. We can do close your eyes for a second. Then what? Take your finger off? Oops. Yeah, no, put your glasses on.
What happened to my finger?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's just like when you're using a table saw, right? You use a push stick, right? You don't that kind of stuff, if you remember it, right? Yeah. Because like that's
so
what it's there for.
Are we still on the topic of preserving your preps before, after, and during, or protecting? I mean, we're protecting ourselves, which is going to help protect our preserving, but
we've still not talked a lot about the after part of it. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, we've kind of touched on it here and there, and the during and after. But
it's an afterthought.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, you're fired again.
No, but well, I mean, you gave me one back, so I had to replace
I brought you back. You just used it up, so we're done. No, you didn't put your safety glasses on, so nope, you're blind.
Oh, okay. Strike one, strike two. I guess I'm at a full count. No, but
so preserving your stuff after the event. I mean, you got to hide. You know, what are we going to do, Alan? What would you do? I mean, 6 months after something happened, you know, where nothing's coming back. I mean, power's gone, law and order's kind of half gone, gangs are roaming wild, whatever. How are you going to preserve whatever preps you have left, including your sanity and your physical health?
Yeah, and stuff that you've got on you. You might think, right, I'm going to keep my Leatherman Wave in my pocket. I'm going to keep my Breastless this in that pocket. I'm going to keep this here on me. And then you get jacked. You get hijacked. You know, give me your stuff. And you lost all that now. It's gone. You know, so do you keep it hidden somewhere? You know, do you...
Well, you know, I think there's two things that were covered there. There's two different topics. Okay. The first one being, what do you do after the event? So society's kind of came back to normal, and you know, or we're rebuilt. The hurricane, for example, is over. Now, what do you do? And then you've got the other thing, which is what Chef and that are talking about. Is it's a continuing thing. What do you do after, you know, the situation has evolved to a point where nothing's coming back, and we're in this prolonged period? That prolonged period is where I believe being a survivalist trumps being a prepper, because that's a different kind of mindset. I'm now no longer relying on resources to see me through the storm. I'm relying on skills and knowledge to see me continuously through the storm, to simply survive. And because I would spend more time and energy on learning how to sustain my own survivability and my family around me with nothing, or simply what's around about me, that puts me in a different position where I'm not so tied to product. I'm not tied to things. Simply, anybody can stockpile things. Anybody can just start stockpiling food and resources. We all know what we need to get day by day, and you can just pile that stuff up. The more money you've got, the more stuff you can have. And then you can slowly whittle your way through it, assuming nobody takes it off you. But eventually you're going to run out, unless you literally buy a lifetime's worth of stuff and you're a billionaire and you have a bunker. You're just going to run out of stuff eventually, and then you're just another guy on the street not knowing what's going on. That's why you need skills. You need knowledge. And I don't just mean wilderness skills. You need some of the skills like Chef Tech's talking about canning, preserving, and things like that. You need to know some basic hunting and trapping skills. You need to know some growing skills, some gardening, maybe a little bit of farming.
How to stay warm.
Fishing skills.
It's going to be a big issue.
If you don't have the physical ability to do a lot of these things, then you have to have the interpersonal skills to be part of society and a helpful somebody that can contribute towards the community, so that other people can bring you these things, because that's what a lot of people also rely on. I think, just quickly as well, I'll just mention that what I thought we were going to more talk about was, okay, the disasters happened. I mean, what do you then immediately do with your preps? I think then it's just a case of taking inventory of what's happened. And I imagine I know you guys are familiar with it because you've spoke about it before, but that video on YouTube with the guy talking about the after the hurricane and all the things he wished he'd done or known. I think it's just taking a situational report of, okay, what the hell just happened? What did I run out of first? What did I wish I had? What did I not need? What if I still, I've got a pantry full of these tins that I didn't use, but I wish I had more of that stuff. And then you have to evolve and adapt based on that and change everything around, and not be don't be tied to this notion that you have to do something a certain way, because if the situation has demonstrated to you in the real world that the way that you've been preaching is the way to do something for your whole life didn't work, change. You have to change. You have to be like a scientist and accept that you were just wrong and move on, and
stay flexible.
Yeah, you have to be absolutely flexible. It's the old
adaptable to the current situation or the outcome or the resources around you, right? You're gonna, like, because unfortunately, well, yeah, that's but because he just had to throw that in for it. But you have to, because like it may change from person to person, to area, to situation, right? I mean, a fire is going to be a little bit different from a flood. Hurricane's going to be a little bit different from an earthquake, and so forth and so forth.
Even the same thing will be different. If you live in a flood-prone area and you have 2 floods over a 5-year period, I guarantee that each one of those floods affected you slightly differently.
Yeah.
And you have to adapt to that.
Yeah, and learn from these events that have actually occurred to you. Like for me, I'm learning every time, during the winter time, or before winter or afterwards, right? What went well and what didn't do so well, and to improve on it, right? Improving on it for the next time around, right? Like we're talking about the before, during, and after, right? Well, what happens if that after comes after the after? It becomes before again, right? For the next thing, whatever that situation is, right? The next thing that occurs. For example, like sometimes you'll see these scenarios that happen where flooding occurs, then there's like fire, or flooding to a heat wave, right? You're gonna transition to this next thing, right? So you're back in before again, right? Before that happens, what are you gonna do, right? But this is after that situation, and that makes any sense, right? Because I've seen this before, time and time again, where that happens, where like there'll be like flooding, and then there'll be a heat wave, something like that, or there'll be a fire, then there'll be flooding, or there'll be flooding, then there'll be like fire, right? That occurs because the area gets changed, right? Yeah, go ahead, Costa.
Yeah, sorry, I was just adding to what you were saying. War and then famine.
Yeah.
There'd be a war, and then after there'd be a famine.
Yeah, and keep that in mind, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's the mindset thing. It's the mind. I'm seeing some of the comments just now, and a lot of people are spot on with what they're saying. After your preps are gone, everybody's a survivalist, and that's a realization that everybody has to, at some point, acknowledge and prepare themselves for that. prepare yourself for the fact that you're not going to have things. And you know, there's things that you need though. You need clothing, you need shelter, you need warmth,
Yeah.
you need food. So think about ways of not just how do I gather and store food, how do I get food? I mean, how do I literally make food from my surroundings? Now, I can't tell somebody in Florida how to get food because I don't live there. I can hazard a guess, seasonality wise, to what they might have resources wise, but it's going to be completely different to what I have in October in Scotland. You know,
Yeah, just like what I have in the middle of winter in December and
exactly.
January.
It's going to be entirely different. So you have to learn your own. It's the way I do it is I always learn about the ancestors of the people who lived in the place that you live. How did they get by?
Yep.
Right, things will have changed, of course. Populations are bigger, the ecology is slightly different, but sometimes, if you really look at it, it's basically the same. Especially if you're lucky enough to be someday like Shadow in Sweden, or like Guardian was talking about in South Africa. These are fantastic countries because they're so pristine in the sense that the nature aspect of them is still very much the way. If I walk out into the bush in South Africa, it will probably look the same today as it did 10,000 years ago. Now, I can't say the same thing about Scotland. There are some places like that, but not many. But what I can do is look at the people that lived where I live right now 400 years ago, or even 200 years ago. They didn't have electricity. They didn't have, supermarkets. They didn't have all of the things that we hold dear to us now. So how did they survive? How did medieval peasants in my location survive? And if you can learn a little bit about that, then that will get you a long way. Because if the big SHTF situation happens, we're all in the Stone Age, that's how you're living, because that's where you're at, So how did those people live? And that's what I pay attention to. And I always try and say that a little bit when I come on these things, is like, pay attention to, one, what's going on in the world right now and how people are surviving, because that's an immediate thing. That's a prepper thing. If a war suddenly starts in your country, or you suddenly have a flood, how do you prepare for that, and how do you survive right now? But also, if you want to play the big game of the whole world goes to the Stone Age for a period of time, well, how did people in the Stone Age live? Especially if you live in a country where people in the Stone Age did live, like I do, then that's something you can actually pay attention to. How did Native Americans live in the state that you live in the United States? How did they get by? What food did they hunt? What did they trap? What did they eat? What did they trade? It will all go back to when everything goes back to zero, everything goes back to the way it used to be.
Yeah, like medieval time, that kind of period of time.
Yeah.
Right.
Then
without modern conveniences like electricity, fridges, all that stuff, right? Like, and it's good to learn about that past, right? And understand how peasants, or anyone really, got through, right?
I think it's vital. To me, that's what survivalism is. Survivalism isn't about living in the woods. Okay, that isn't about just foraging and picking berries. It's about understanding the past with literally nothing. It's about understanding what you as a human being need. And everybody, as human beings, we all need the exact same things. We need shelter, we need we need food, we need water, etc. And security.
Oh, and the air.
Well, yeah, but
let's not forget that.
Hey guys.
Welcome back, Bobby.
Welcome back, Bob.
Let me throw in, how did the American Indians, Canadian, American, and South America, if that tribe over there has food and we don't have any, and then we can't barter for that, guess how they lived? They were vicious, man, but they had to be. They had to be. But
they didn't always do that, because if an entire nation of people simply got their subsidy from taking from their neighbor, eventually you would get to a zero-sum game, and nobody would have anything.
If you can't work out a deal, then they'd attack.
And remembering as well that they didn't get to that just by going in the bushes or they didn't just become survivalists just like that. They kept, we look back and say it's brilliant stuff. I totally agree with looking. I say the same thing back at my parents were from Greece, what have you, and they still sort of, when I went there back in the 80s, early 90s, they were sort of fishing an old-fashioned kind of way, and I learned some skills there, which was great. And it's all good all this, learning how to live off the land like they did, like the American Indians did, and other tribes did. But we've got to remember that they got through a very harsh time to get to that knowledge. We haven't been through that harsh time. And okay, yes, it's good to know that knowledge. I agree, definitely. But getting to that point where we're living, I mean, we look at them and think, wow, they were living comfortably in teepee. They had it all sort of organized and they were living. But was it comfortable? That's my question. That's all.
You're right what you're saying. You're 100% right in saying that simply imagining that you could go to the point where they were at and somehow appropriate their knowledge and their understanding that's took them literally probably thousands of years to develop over a period of time.
That's comfortable. For us to do I learned the Indian knowledge, so I'm going to be comfortable.
Yeah, it's nonsense to believe that. That's for sure. And there's lots of lost knowledge as well. The problem with the Indians in America, like the Native Americans and Canadians and things like that, is they didn't write a lot of stuff down, so a lot of their knowledge has been lost. And I mean, we're a little bit better off in Europe because we wrote a lot of stuff down, so we can very easily find out how peasants in the UK survived 500-600 years ago because the Doomsday Book. There's literally a book called the Doomsday Book where they wrote a lot of this kind of stuff down, and there's a lot of that knowledge there. But a lot of that's lost as well. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that we were speaking earlier about canning food and things like that, things that our grandparents used to do, that we just don't have that knowledge anymore.
And the immune system as well. They had people were a bit more harder. Maybe we're a bit softer as well. Like people will panic. Oh, my phone ain't working. I've got no internet.
No, they died earlier. They died.
Freak out. There's no milk in the fridge.
No, but they died much earlier. Like life expectancy was so much worse back then. So like people of today are actually much hardier because of our technology and advancements in medicine.
But take in mind that they had to survive. Yeah, but take in mind that they had to survive 35, 40 years in that kind of environment. If we're surviving in a different type of environment, because it's a better and more comfortable, more easier, more food, more available. But the way that they lived, could we live 35 years, 40 years in that environment? That's what I'm trying to get at.
Well,
if you was born in one of those situations now, and all of a sudden you're living in the sort of mud hut. There's nothing, you've got to rummage around. You've got, whatever. You've got to chase after wild boars. I don't know whatever they did back then, but how long will you live?
There's a misconception that people in the past lived harder or worse than we did now. This isn't true. Okay. First of all,
Neanderthals, the whole bone structure, their jaws were bigger than our jaws because they could.
Well, Neanderthals are a different species.
We're talking 80,000, 100,000 years ago. Now let's stick within at least a 300-year radius here and not go back into the Paleolithic.
Neanderthals are a different species altogether. I mean, just quickly on life expectancy, the whole idea that we lived sort of 30, 40 years, okay? That doesn't mean we died at 35 years old or 40 years old. The mean average is 40 years because there was high infant mortality. So a lot of women died in childbirth, so a lot of babies died. So you take 0 and then you take the average person sort of 40 years old and you end up with 35 years old. People 400 years ago, peasants in my country 400 years ago lived till they were 85 years old, no problem. Right? That wasn't a problem. Of course, we didn't have things like cancer treatment and the ability to bring somebody back to life if they're having a heart attack. So that increases the mortality rate. But for the most part, if you live past 2 years old, you will probably die sometime in your 60s, 70s, or 80s. Right? That's been the case for most of human history. So look this up after this conversation. The idea that everybody died at age 35 is a myth. That's not true. Okay? High infant mortality is what happened.
I want to introduce something that's more along the lines of now. And have you considered, okay, the big one hits, earthquake, whatever it is. Now you're going to have to rely on your preps because you are your own first responder. Now I've got food put away and a way to cook it. What are you going to do with your food garbage? Containers of different types. What are you going to do with it? Because there's not going to be any garbage service to come pick it up. And you sure as hell don't want to advertise that you've got empty cans of food and packaging. What are you going to do with that stuff?
Yeah, you have to go into a mindset of recycling your own stuff,
Yeah.
or at the very least, covertly burying it or disposing of
Right.
it that way. But I mean, something as simple as a container is actually an incredibly difficult thing to find in nature, and will become more valuable to you. If you realize you're starting to live in a situation where you don't have a container, for example, to gather water, suddenly you don't become so frivolous with things. People wouldn't throw away as much. Everything would suddenly have a use, or you would probably use it as some sort of fuel. If you had a wood burning stove, suddenly everything looks like a log. You know.
Yeah, you know what that reminds me of? The Great Depression. Medieval times with peasants, they had to do that kind of stuff. They had to use the nothing, as PV would say, right? In SHTF, nothing is single use or disposable, as he says it, right? Because back then, that's all the resources you had, right? So you're stretching every resource imaginable, right? Like the bones from that chicken or whatever, you're making broth out of it. You're getting the marrow out of it. You're getting every last bit out of it, right? Yeah. You know, and all that stuff, because like even the water, like there's like you know, even if you just burn some wood, right? You're using the ash afterwards, supposedly for something, right? I mean, most people, they just discard it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, right? Because,
do you know,
yeah, go ahead.
Do you know, it reminded me that we were talking about medieval people and stuff. Do you know, in the 16th century, people used urine to wash their clothes in medieval Britain because, you know, they would actually collect up. It was quite a valuable resource. And it actually has a bleaching effect. So, like, you use the urine for clothing, and then the sun bleaches it very white. And it became actually a bit of an indicator of almost a fashionable indicator in medieval people to say, look how white my clothing is. It's so white, it's so clean. But they were using urine to do that. Now that's a piece of knowledge that almost nobody knows, really. You know, in modern society, they would never think of that. They would see that as the absolute pinnacle of what a waste resource is. I mean, there's nothing useful about urine, surely. Yes, there is. If you just happen to go further enough back in time to learn about everything that people used to employ and how people used to use things. Yeah. And by understanding that kind of knowledge and having that kind of mindset, that's what makes a survivalist. That makes you more resource rich, because you don't need to stockpile detergent anymore. You know, I'm not that bothered about that.
How do they get rid of the smell though? Like, was there a way for them to actually?
I'll link you the channel to a very interesting channel. I think it's called Medieval TV or something like that. A British guy, and he's an expert in medieval times, and he was talking about it and demonstrating it. But when you bleach it in the sun, when you put it in the sun and it's exposed to the UV rays, it removes any kind of smells or anything like that, because bad fresh urine doesn't actually really smell that much if you're just consuming water and stuff. And then once you expose it to the UV light, it takes away all of the the bad smelling things and stuff like that.
That's awesome. That's a good bit of knowledge to know. Like,
it's kind of like making hides. So if you're using animal skins to make clothing, the old methods of doing this was to brain it. So they would use the brains or your braining material and urine as well. Urine would also be used for this purpose, and you can tan hides this way, and you can make leather products this way. And this is how clothing is made. The Inuit people still do this. Some Inuit people even wet their furs with water or sometimes urine, and then they let it go supple, and then they use their teeth and they bite it all along, and it makes it even softer. And they keep on doing this, and it becomes more malleable, and then they get softer clothing, and it goes that bright white way as well, because they're using the UV sun. There's so much knowledge out there that does still exist. It's just a case of finding out about it, learning about it, and then practicing it. You have to practice. Yeah. And a few of these skills are all you really need to get by. But you have to make sure you're doing it in your climate. There's no point in me learning about how to skin an alligator. You know, I'm never going to find one. Not here. So you have to be, focused on what it is you're actually likely to do. And imagine yourself in a situation 300 years ago. Everybody always goes on about what happens if the power goes out, the whole world will end. Well, we've only had electricity a couple of hundred years, and we managed to go through most of human history without electricity. So humans are adaptable. We can survive.
All right, we should all go to Greece. Have a break. Everyone go to Greece, and we'll have a nice party, nice barbecue, nice feta cheese and salad, and everybody just needs to chill out. And you know, but unfortunately, man is naturally the way they are, so they're gonna go through with it. They just want to have a big fight because they can't sort of share the resources. So we're here sort of trying to say, well,
I'm more glass half full.
Having a look at some survival stories could be a good idea to encourage us, strengthen us spiritually, physically, mentally. People that have been through abuse, people that have been through physical violence. I mean, Guardian was talking about stuff that he's been through. I'm really sorry to hear about that. And on behalf of the people that want to be good on the planet Earth, we're very sorry. I'm sorry. You know, it's not easy living in the world. It's not easy trying to be nice with everybody, because even sometimes we try to be nice with people, but they don't want it. They don't want to have that connection. I try, and unfortunately, we can't make everybody happy. But we're going back to this, looking at people's survival stories. You know, psychologically, okay, we've spoken about survival skills. You know, we've spoken about gear. Let's speak a little bit about your state of mind. I think someone briefly mentioned it earlier.
Yeah, that was me.
Or Chef, right? So your mental state is going to be so important. And so look at your survivor stories and say, you know, because quite often they will say, this got me through, that got me through, this way of thinking got me through. You know, we see a film. Who remembers that famous film with Paul Newman? Was it The Great Escape? And he had a baseball and a baseball glove, and he sat in the prison cell, and all he did all day was just bounce the ball off the wall. And that, you know, he got through it. Fantastic film, Great Escape. Steve McQueen, Paul Newman, someone like that.
Yeah, that was it. I remember it.
Great film. You know, so okay. Let me briefly talk about my past. My mum and dad divorced. Horrible time. They both got remarried. Horrible time. They both looking at them. They're all having a new relationship. Anyway, cut a long story short. Drama, blah blah. Psychological stuff. Felt like I was in prison. Anyway, you know, you get through it. What got me through it? You know, in my mind, you're going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. You just, as well, you know, you talk to yourself. You might find yourself in this situation. I'm freezing. I'm cold. I'm wet. I'm hungry. You know, there's no electricity. There's no light. You know, we've mentioned it before. Put yourself through it. See how it feels. Don't just wait for the last step. Don't wait until you're put in that. It's like learning how to swim. Don't wait until you fall in the lake. You know, until you learn how to try to learn how to swim as well. All right, but you know, look at the survival stories, like the cowboys, the Aborigines, the people in the desert. What got them through? You know, that's what we got to look at, not just food and shelter, but psychologically. You know.
Well, that willingness to go on, right? Your self-morale, or the morale of the group that you're in, your family too, right? I mean, like, if you think about it, that's important too, because it's like, because everyone's fighting, everyone's arguing or whatever, nothing's gonna get done. And then, you know, you get division. And what happens when you get division in group? Well, things happen, right?
Yeah.
Things happen.
Yeah.
Someone wants to take charge and, you know, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. Let's do it this way. No, let's do it my way.
Let's
right?
go
And
this
the next
way.
thing you know,
It's that
things fall
way.
apart.
Oh,
It'll fall apart.
What was that famous film, Poseidon, when that boat turned upside down and they were trying to decide which way to go?
The Poseidon Adventure, yeah.
And they said, right, let's go this way. The other group said, no, let's go that way. And they split up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Life and death
I would-
decisions, man. That's what's coming.
Did you
Well,
get?
if I can go back to the realistic topic of garbage disposal, especially food
Thank you.
packaging.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, this could happen to any one of us at a moment. For God's sakes, have a good working shovel and a pick.
Mm.
If you can't,
And a
because you certainly-
sanitation plan.
Yeah,
Good
right,
idea.
and
Yeah.
because
A
you
compost
cannot
mode.
recycle everything, and if you don't have a way of burning everything, a pick and
Or you
shovel
can't.
is mine, as I'm going to dig a garbage pit in my backyard, and that's where my food trash is going to go. And if I can't do that, well, guess what? I'm going to load up a little basket full of my food garbage, and I'm going to just quietly walk down the street and throw it. Get it away from my house. Get it far away from my house as possible. And as far as cooking without being detected, pay attention to your area. I live in a suburb, so if somebody else is cooking, that's when I'm going to cook.
It's like
they
the
won't-
generator, right? You
Right.
know, if
Same
so-
way. Same thing. Yeah. If this guy's generator's running, I'm going to fire up mine.
Yeah.
Because somebody can hear a generator running or someone smells cooking. Well, which house is it? You know,
Yeah,
you
you're kind of
understand?
masking it what you're
Right.
what you're doing, right? Let's say if
Blend
it's
right
windy
in.
or
Mhm.
raining
Yeah.
or something. Yeah, because you'll
This is
mask
the
the
great.
sound.
This is the grey man aspect of it. Really, a grey man isn't just about you as an individual. It's about your what it is, your
Your actions.
movements, your actions, everything about you. You know, masking your smell and your noise with other smells and other noise, blending in, becoming part of the motion rather than sticking out from it.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. That's something I've really haven't put much thought into, but Took asked a good question. You know, would it be fair to say, you know, would be worthwhile to having, you know, prepared dump sites? Yeah, I would scout out your area something within walking distance, maybe an empty lot or someone who's moved out of a house, you know, just throw it right over their fence and go back to your house. Yeah.
I think that tends to be something that naturally happens. I've noticed that recently while I was following. There's a big issue in Birmingham right now, a city in the UK, with binman strikes and other issues, and people are dumping a lot of their trash, but they're dumping it in one location. They're you know, people kind of get savvy. They don't want rats and stuff running around their own streets, so they started dumping it in parking lots or car parks. And you know, and then eventually they realize that everybody else is dumping it in one place and nobody's moving it, so that becomes the place where it all gets dumped. And then you have these places now that are just dump sites, and the council try and tackle them that way. This is your own waste as well. I mean, see, talking about getting rid of your own rubbish, in an SHTF situation, a lot of flushing toilets don't work because they require pumping stations and electricity. They're not all gravity fed. The further up the chain, electricity is involved. So if that stuff stops working, you're going to need to have a latrine dug somewhere. Now, you might have a good garden or a place to go or something like that, but you're going to because I mean, disease quickly follows famine, you know, and that becomes a real problem in these kind of places.
Later on in the year, when I get ready to put my gardening tools away in my garden shed for the winter, I'll show you how I preserve the wood and the metal so it doesn't rust over the winter. I'll show you how to do that with pick and shovel. You know, no batteries required, nothing. You got
to protect your tools, right? I'm just saying.
Yes, sir. You bet. You bet.
I'm not going to answer Norfolk's question because I'm keeping that secret just in case she happens to be watching.
Screaming.
No, that's an important thing too, right? As Bob just said about all that stuff, right? How I brought it up. I'm like, well, yeah, that's important. You got to protect your tools too that you're using for these whatever activities that you're doing, right? It doesn't matter if it's dealing with water, food, a shovel, saw, or anything like that, right? You're gonna be able to protect that stuff, right? Metal rusts, wood can degrade down, right? Plastic breaks, fiberglass can snap.
It does.
You also have to have a means to maintain tools. So lots of people will do things like say, I've got an axe and I've got a knife and these are the things that I need, but they've got no way of sharpening them.
Right.
So you know, pay attention to having things like a file. A file can be an invaluable resource when it comes to sharpening tools.
Yeah,
Or
so
some
knowing
good-
that, use that file is the other half of that tool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, learn how to use it properly, because if you sharpen a tool like a knife badly, you'll do far more damage than you will, you know,
Yeah.
to anything else.
I'll show you the simple stuff. They're called Arkansas stones. They come in different sizes and different grades. I think I've showed this before, but here's one Arkansas stone. These are the best for sharpening your tools. Like example is with these are made in Japan, and I do gardening a lot, and I love pruning, but just whisk that down once every few days, and take off all that pitch that's stuck onto there. And my good old dependable, reliable, man, this stuff, my grandparents used it 3-in-1 oil. It cleans, it lubricates, and it what do you call it? Preserves. 3-in-1 oil. You can't beat this stuff. But Arkansas stones, they should be in some of your kits. They really should, because you can reach right down on the edge of the blade with one of these stones right there. To me, I would rather use a type of a scissor than anything else. You know, an axe or anything, if I can. You know.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Little wisdom for you young guys.
Like me. No, but that is important to remember, right? Like, especially with tool. Yeah, well, especially something with, say, carbon steel, for example, right? Technically,
like a shovel.
Steel. Well, yeah, anything that's high in carbon steel too, right? Because it'll rust faster than stainless.
Correct.
Yep. I have carbon steel knives. Yep.
Yeah, you gotta make sure, like, after every use, right? Like, if you're like cutting something that had some salt in it, you probably want to wipe that off to clean that off right away. You know.
Seriously gonna piss me off in a minute. Really, I'm gonna grab you at the yeah.
Is he talking to us?
Did I miss something?
I don't know. I think he's talking to somebody else.
Oh,
okay.
He must be. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, someone's annoying my neighbour big time, and I'm saying in Greek, I'm going to get annoyed in a minute, and I'm going to go and get him by his ear hole.
Okay.
Okay.
That's great. Hit the mute, but hit the mute on your mic when you do that.
Yeah.
No problem.
The Shadow, you can take me down from present.
Yeah.
No, thanks.
I think he heard me and he left.
Yeah, tool preparation is absolutely vital, and because that preserves a lot of your other preps, and people just take it for granted. Right. I've got several ways of looking after my own tools, and you've got small sharpening stones and stuff that you can take out into the field, and you just touch up your knife and things like that. But you have to have a base camp system as well. You have to have something at your home or in your garage or on a base camp, and I've got. You can see the sort of size of the one I've got. This is my tool sharpening kit. That's entirely what that's for. This is for axes, knives, all that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to be able to go through everything, the whole content that's in here, but suffices to say it's things like, strops. And here I've got different grades of Japanese waterstone.
Those are really great. That's what I heard.
Fantastic. I've got, different kinds of oils to not only preserve the tools that I've got if there's working parts, but there's, also this Kama oil and stuff that's very good for bladed items and stuff like that as well. Little wax stones for really getting fine edges on your tools and your leather works and stuff. There's all sorts of stuff you can have. This isn't something you would ever carry into the field. This is like really fine tuning, the sharpness of your blades. You can see here that I got this using the Japanese waterstones. I've got 3 grades of Japanese waterstone, and then also have this as well. It's called a Nagura stone. Very cool little name. And this is actually just a tiny little stone that in the water, you use this on top of the finest stone that you've got. You just you put it over the top of the stone, and it makes a very fine slurry. And you can get a very, very fine edge on a cutting tool with that. You don't actually need a razor sharp edge on things like an axe. In some cases, that can actually be a bad thing. Because that's not really what an axe is for. But some knives and tools have to be that sharp, and you have to learn how to do this. This is a skill that you have to learn. You can buy all this stuff and then just totally screw up all your tools because you use them wrong. It takes a bit of doing, but it's definitely something like this. Having a box like this with this kind of material is something you should have in your preps, because this looks after my preps. And this is the part that people forget. It's kind of like having a car but having zero parts for it. There's no point in having a car if you've got no parts.
Well, just to add in, Silver, I know in the bushcrafting community at times they're using saws, batoning wood and stuff like that, right? They're getting fat wood, right? One of the things is when you're getting fat wood, right? Because of the resin, right? It sticks to the saw. It sticks to your blade, right? And it becomes harder to baton because it's sticking to it. The saw, it starts to stick, right? It becomes more difficult. It clogs it up, right? So one of the things, especially with that wood, because it's pitch, I always make sure I bring the hand sanitizer with me because I can remove it easier. Because it's actually quite hard to remove with just water. But the hand sanitizer actually works. I always keep that in mind. You want to keep a saw kind of, clean-ish for a certain, relatively speaking, right? Because you want it to slide back and forth, or a blade to slide through, right?
Yeah.
You don't want that resistance from the pitch, right? Because you'll just be working harder and harder, and the next thing you know, you'll get injured, right? So a little bit of prevention can save you like a nickel.
Just like in the culinary world, a dull knife is your worst enemy.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's just slowing you down, right?
No, in this case, you're pushing harder. When you slip, you're putting a hole in yourself, and then you're into a medical scenario.
Yeah, eventually.
Yeah.
Here's what I do. This is another old timer's little trick. These are India stones. They have 2 different grit on them. But before I sharpen my knives, or when I'm doing work on my milling machine, I skim the surface. But before I do anything, I take care of my stones. And the best way to do that is flat to flat. Yep. And just start working it to make sure that you take down the high spots in your stones. Trust me, this is. I mean, I saw my grandpa doing this stuff, and little shit like this makes a big difference, guys, when you go to sharpen up your knife, because you've got a good flat surface now, not something that's wavy that's going to give you an inconsistent cut. Yep.
Yeah. You have to learn about the specific types of metals as well. I find that, for example, I mean, the main metal I tend to use is called 01 tool steel, which is a high carbon steel fixed blade knife. That's very good for general purpose bushcraft type stuff. I can carve with it, I can cut meat with it, and that kind of stuff. Stainless steel blades, I've got a couple of those. I actually find stainless steel very difficult to sharpen and keep its edge. And I also tend to find, Chef Tech might be able to jump in on me here, but if I try to use, or even yourself, Bob, if I use stainless steel on my Japanese waterstones, it actually leaves more residue than it does the carbon steel, and it actually seems to negatively affect the stones. So I have a separate sharpening bench which I use for stainless steel. I don't know why that is, but it seems to me that stainless steel is quite difficult to sharpen, and when you do sharpen it, it can affect the stones more than carbon steel.
Stainless steel is carbon steel mixed with nickel. The higher the nickel content, the more peel off you get with the sub metal. I see you are. Anyway, so stainless steel has a high nickel content in it, and when you run it on a stone, you will clog your stones up. I've done it many times, and it took me forever to figure out why. And I did a little research. I was like, oh, stainless steel, the nickel content in the iron dust will float away with the oil. The nickel content in stainless steel will get itself bound up in your stones, even a fine stone or a honing stone.
Yeah.
So in order to keep those clean, you're constantly grinding your stones down and you lose your stone. But carbon steel knives, oh crap. Yeah, I can run it on. I have a full-size tri-stone, of course, medium fine. It's a hone. And I can run a carbon steel knife on there. I never use the coarse. I most of the time use the medium for like maybe 10, 12 swipes, 6 on each side. And then I'm off to the hone at like a 25-degree angle and run it on my steel for a second, wipe it off, oil it down, and that thing is razor sharp. Stainless steel knives are just a pain to keep sharp, period.
Yep.
Yeah, I find stainless steel knives to be difficult to keep sharp.
Yeah.
I only have them for very specific reasons. I mean, in the field, I don't take all those big stones with me. I take just a little thing like this. Which
don't get me wrong, I use
just
stainless knives all the
little.
time. Why? Because they have not like a plastic handle, and they go right in the dishwasher. And my wife does it, so I only use the steel knives when I'm doing stuff for me, and I'm going to take care of it when I'm done. And stuff, if I'm carving certain cuts of meat and that I want it just right, I'll whip out the carbon steel knives. And I keep a rag with some kind of cooking oil on it right next to it. So after I make a couple cuts, because the meat is wet and there's water content in there, I'll wipe it on the oiled rag, food grade oil, just to keep it from, because it'll build up rust like instantly, and you can watch it happen. It's it's weird, it's sad, but it happens. It's normal.
Yeah, it's different metals and different tools for different environments. I find the only time I tend to really combine them is just randomly at hand here. I've got something like this. This is a parang. Okay, so this is I don't very often do it. I very sometimes, 3 or 4 times, I have really tropical environments. And this is a high carbon steel parang. Now, it's a very unique tool. Made
like
in Malaysia.
Yeah,
and it's very good for what it is. I find this to be quite easy to sharpen and use in those kind of environments. But for also it's actually blunt there at that side, so you could hold it like this, and then you can do cooking with it and carve with it. It's it's not a weapon, so it's not designed for that. It's designed for crafting, chopping your way through brush and things like that, and cooking with and cutting with. But in addition to this, if you look at my sheath, you'll see I also have a stainless steel knife. Now, this is one of the very few bushcrafty stainless steel knives I have. And the reason I have a stainless steel knife is because in the tropics, literally everything is humid and wet. And it's a nightmare trying to keep the rust off of this in a tropical environment. The stainless steel knife,
that's the
however,
reason for keeping a stainless steel knife in your bug out kit. If it gets a little humid in there, it's not going to rust.
Yeah,
as long as
absolutely.
you put it there, you can kind of keep it sharp. But in environments and that, you kind of don't want to carry a carbon steel knife, because within, a week, it'll just be covered with rust, and then it'll pit really fast, and it's a downhill run once carbon steel. The patina. Once the carbon steel gets corrosion on there, it kind of gets embedded into the metal itself, and it's just a pain in the butt.
Yeah, there's pros and cons.
I just wanted to let you know the way I handle my stones is I use water when I sharpen anything, just water.
Yeah.
And occasionally I'll take my stones and use if they get gummed up, when they're gummed up, just touch it up with a little bit of Scotch Brite, and then run it underneath soap and water, just soap, and then rub the 2 stones together, wash it off again, rub the 2 stones together. A little bit of Scotch Brite and water. That works really the best for me, because then
I've always used mineral oil
thing
on my stones, but they're oil stones, not what they call wet stones.
Yeah, mine are wet stones. The ones I showed you, these are wet stones. You don't use oil with these.
Right.
You actually submerge these. The container that they're in is also the container where I submerge them. So that's a whole joint system now.
And I got 20 pounds of ground chicken and now go seal up. So I'll be back in about 10, 15 minutes. Hold the show there, Bob.
Well, I'm actually gonna bounce out of here, guys. My missus is home, and she's upstairs. We had a lunch date out, and she's upstairs taking a siesta. So I'm gonna go crawl in next to my little missus. So thanks again for having me up here.
Thanks, Bob.
You're very welcome.
CR. CR.
Lips are closed.
All right, peace out, you guys. Thanks for having me up again. Later, all.
Yeah, I think what High Country Homestead is saying there about Australia banning machetes today and things like. I mean, that's another thing you have to just pay some attention to as well. If you have tools of any description, cutting tools, shooting tools, any kind of tool, you have to be aware of the fact that your country's laws might change as well. and that changes what you can and can't prep. If you want to be entirely legal, for example, they're always trying to ban something in the UK, zombie nice and nonsense like this. I've heard it say that they have gangster problems in London, so they should ban machetes and stuff like that. That has nothing to do with me having a parang who sometimes goes to tropical environments where a tool like that is just literally required. It's not the kind of thing I would advocate running around the streets with. But you have to also realise that in the kind of countries we live in, we are very regulated, and people want you to be. They don't want you to have this knowledge. They don't want you to have tools like axes or knives or machetes or anything like this. They want you to rely entirely on the state and rely entirely on them. So take it as you will in terms of what is and isn't legal. If my parang suddenly became illegal tomorrow, would I get rid of it? I wouldn't show it on this channel anymore. That's probably about it.
The reason why they want us to depend on them so much is because that's the easiest way for us to be gone. Because, if you depend on them for your food, for your water, for your resources, for everything, then all the best with that one. And again, you've seen the prices of rent these days in America and all around the world, and how much homeless people there are. And they're even attacking people's motorhomes. You can't have a motorhome, no. You can't park there. No. It's really scenic, officer. Yeah, but you can't park there. Yeah, but look, my wife likes to see. Yeah, but you can't park there because it's illegal for you to park there. It's a motorhome, officer. I bought a motorhome so we can park there. No, but you can't park there. Where can I park? Only specific zones where you can park. So then, in the SHTS situation, what's going to happen then? Like we hear situations like a specific name that I'm not going to mention on Shadow's channel, where something happened on an island, and immediately they're protecting their property. They're not protecting the people who are fleeing a situation that's really, could affect their lives. They could die. So, but they can't go to escape to this area because it's owned by someone who's got their own security now. He's not allowing you to go on that land. So there's going to be all kinds of issues of where am I going to? Well, if the rent prices, if people are homeless, what's going to happen? They're going to clean it up. Are they going to come after us? What are they going to do? What they're going to set up? We know in America we hear stories like FEMA camps. Should we go there after an event? Okay, whatever event it might be, flood, hurricane, war, civil unrest, whatever. Again, are we going to set up somewhere? Is it good to just keep moving? Maybe move, keep moving. Where are we going to go?
It kind of brings us back to the topic actually about protecting your own preps. Earlier on we kind of scoffed at the idea that the government was going to come for your food. The government probably isn't interested in your food, but they will come for your machete or your axe or your wood burning stove or your ability to have a generator at home or your ability to store fuel at home or
even your car.
So they're attacking your independence and your freedom. It doesn't matter which country you come from. Any country that has a government that has a mindset or an agenda where it wants you to become ever more reliant on the state. The more reliant on the state you are, the less free you are. The bigger the state, the less free you are.
Yeah, because that's what, when you said earlier, there's a disconnection between this knowledge. They've stopped us from living that old-fashioned way because it worked. They don't want us to know those old ways. Sorry to cut you there, Alan.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. That's what I was alluding to. I live in a country that it rains pretty much every day and there's water all around me, yet I get charged for water.
Yep.
What am I being charged for exactly? Clean water. I can walk down the street to a stream and get clean water right there.
Oh, there was a time when we was a valued customer. You're valued. We're not going to shut the shop now because you're a valued customer. There used to be a saying, the customer's always right. But what's happened now? These people have made all their money and they don't need us anymore. They've got AI, they've got robots, they've got stuff that, they don't need so much, and they're talking to each other. Oh, they're so rough. these people, these cattle, oh, they're so dangerous. We've got to cull them. Oh, gosh, they're coming outside my mansion. Look, where? Look, 10 miles away. They're there, look, humans. Oh, gosh. You know, so, yeah, we can't depend on those people. In normal time, you can't depend on them. You can't depend on them now. In so-called peacetime, whatever. They're still doing stuff.
I think for me, I mean, most preppers are aware of the fact that they can't depend on some sort of outside body to look after them. That's why they prepare. That's what they know. This they can see this on the horizon. And I would say, for me as a survivalist, what I'm hoarding is skills, knowledge of the old ways of doing things, and practicing those ways. Because once you learn it and you see it and you practice it, and it's in here, nobody can take that from you. You know, and you can pass that on to your children, or write it down and keep the knowledge going, because it will disappear. There's so much knowledge and history has vanished over the years. We spoke about that earlier on. So much has gone now. So much that we just don't know how to do.
You know, I'll give a little example of what you're saying there. Sorry, Alan.
Yeah, go ahead.
A little example of what you're saying there. Like this book here, I think I might have shown it once before. Basically, it's Handbook of Country Crafts, and it shows you how to make containers, how to weave, you know, mats. For example, okay, you find a cave, and you know you want to insulate the floor, so you make a mat. You can make you know, containers. You can do all sorts of things. So this kind of skills, like you're saying, the old ways. You know, people used to make roofs with reeds. There's all kinds of designs. I was just trying to find a container. Like you mentioned, there you go, it's like a basket. You know, because things like this we might need to carry stuff. It's going to be handy. So it's only a thin little book, and it's got so much how to make wine, how to use different types of flowers for medicinal purposes. And I picked it up, funny enough, in a second-hand shop for like, I don't know, 40p.
Yeah, knowledge is power. And it's important as well. It's important that you have it in the physical form like that. This is a lot of people are too quick to not buy physical books anymore. And they'll download PDFs, or they'll have a PDFs on a thumb drive somewhere and say, that's all I need to know. I don't need to know how to forage because I've got a thumb drive that tells me how to do it. A thumb drive is no use when there's no power, or your computer, or you have no access to a computer. I
agree.
A book, you need physical books. Books can last for hundreds of years if you look after them. And books should be part of your preps. Absolutely.
That's why I always have books. That's why I always buy books about prepping and things.
I don't even know if you can actually see behind me. I've got a whole bookshelf full of, you know, those are almost everything on my bookshelf is a survival-related book, or a book about the past, a book about how people survived in the past and how they got by. There's a few other things up there as well that are not entirely related to this topic, but for the most part, that's what I like to read about. And they're not just survival manuals. They're not just manuals about how do you tie a knot, how do you build a shelter. They're practical things about how did people actually build their house in the 18th century. How did people construct canoes in the 17th century? You know, how did containers get constructed or baskets get weaved using stinging nettles in my environment 50 years ago? Those are the kinds of things that people don't know anymore. And you can't just learn it. You can't just wander off into the woods and suddenly learn how to make a basket. You just won't be able to do it.
It might take you 20 years again. It's getting to that point where you're comfortable in your, you know, in your environment, right? You know, you're not saying that you would never understand how to make a basket, but it might take you a number of years to perfect it.
Yeah, for sure.
And
You
it
can't
takes a lot of practice.
That's why we need society. That's why you need society. That's why you need groups of people. That's why human beings, as we evolved, developed a family network where you had women would, have lots of skills, and men would have other separate skills, and they would delegate the tasks between their household, and the tasks would then go further to the neighbors, and then the street, then the community, and then it would get bigger and bigger as time went on. And you would have community sort of resources going on, even in small camp type and settlements. If you're talking about Native Americans like we were earlier on, they weren't just out there stealing and hoarding from people, or like the Vikings and stuff. They weren't just taking from other people. No, they had their own network. They had their own system where some people were builders, there were craftsmen, there were scholars, there were educators, fishermen, hunters, warriors. They all had these different skills, and they would all contribute a little piece of what they had to their bigger society in order to all benefit each other. And this is what I was saying earlier, when even if all of that got unraveled with a conflict or a war or some other catastrophe, eventually people in groups get together and realize what they can and can't do and how they can help each other out. And from that, you get order. And from order, you get society. That's where that comes from. But in the meantime, you as an individual have to have all the preps that you individually need and the people you care about most need, which in reality can only be 2 or 3 people. If you have a household bigger than 5, you're going to need some help, because you can't be a lone prepper or a lone survivalist in a household that big, because that's just too many people to feed, clothe, keep warm, look after, in the worst case scenarios. You have to have help. That's why you need to teach your children and your wife or your husband how to prep, how to survive, how to do some of these old school things, how to get
Share
by
that knowledge.
No electricity. Share that knowledge, share that wisdom. Don't hoard it to yourself, because I mean, I could be the best survivalist in the world, and then get hit by a bus and my entire family starves to death, whereas the whole time I had a cache of buried food in the garden that I didn't tell them about, because I didn't think they would know how to use it properly or something.
You wanted to surprise everyone and say, hey, you know what, I've got a secret stash.
Yeah.
It's a birthday present.
Do you remember that film? Do you remember the film, is it called The Road? Where there was like an SHF situation. There's a guy who's left with his son, and then they just
The Road.
And at one point they stumble across. I mean, how do you stumble across a bunker? But anyway, they stumbled across this sort of kind of. There was loads of food in there, and there was really, really happy.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, there might be some sort of amazing situation where you just happen to stumble across a Twinkie factory or something.
Yeah, but that's luck. Right, that's luck. It's not always going to be like that, right?
I wouldn't go relying on that. But I mean, as preppers, that's something that all of us should be aware of, because you are that bunker full of goodies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely tools are going to play a part. Some kind of tool, some kind of be it for chopping, be it for dealing with woodwork,
fire making.
Cutting, digging, and sharpening are the tools that you need. Other tools like hammering and stuff like that, you can use anything for that. But cutting, digging, and sharpening.
Yeah.
Man, you got that. I'm back. Yay! 40 pounds of chicken processed and frozen. Then you got the other scenario, which we kind of don't talk about. What about the ones that live in a city? I mean, literally concrete everywhere, blacktop everywhere. You ain't digging or sharpening. I mean, you might be sharpening and cutting, but you may not be digging anywhere because there's no place to dig. Then you're hiding stuff in tunnels and stuff, and trying to figure out where you can survive and hide your stuff. If you got 100,000 people in your vicinity, and then 80% of them die, you got that problem. And then you got, okay, where am I hiding my stuff? I'm just in my apartment, or took over another apartment, or tried to get into a storage building somewhere and hide out there. I mean, we're always talking about going into the woods and digging holes, and we don't talk too much about being stuck in the city.
Yeah, you do have to be adaptable with a lot of things. The problem with cities are unnatural. That's the problem.
This is where having cache is a good idea, because you can have one in close to your place if need be, and then you know, if you need to sort of go out of the city, you can have them strategically placed where you can have like kind of pit stops, because obviously sometimes it might be 10 miles in some cities, or some cities are massive, depends. It might be 15 miles to walk out, it might be 10, it might be 5. So you have strategically placed caches. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still always good to have, even in the city, some kind of tool. You've got pry bars. Okay, you're not digging, but you might have to pry. You might have to pry a girder. A steel girder's falling on someone. You know, it could be concrete. You know.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we don't all have the same tools we keep talking about. Oh, nothing against it. I mean, if it works, it works. You know, I'm going to plant caches in the direction I'm going to go. Well, what if you can't go that direction? All your caches are now in the fire, so to speak. I mean, if it's a forest fire, and you can't go that way, you're going this way. Great. I got nothing except whatever I kept at my house and I can carry on my back. So, I mean, I understand caches. If you know there's going to be like 1 or 2 ways out of where you're at, yeah, you plant a few caches along the way. You know damn well a couple of them you're never going to see again because you're never going to go back. You might not go back to that area again. They're just gone. So that's like Alan says, you keep a certain day's supply of everything you need in one cache buried somewhere if you can find a place to bury it. And just hope nobody digs it up. And you know where it is. It's under that pile of rocks with a piece of granite on top out in the middle of the woods somewhere, and you know about where it is, and nobody's going to go pulling a bunch of rocks apart just to see what might be under there.
You have to also make sure that if you have more than one cache, and you really have to have more than one cache, if you get to a cache and it's been compromised, your next cache isn't so far away that you're going to be in a survival situation just try to get to the next one. There's no point in spacing them out unbelievably huge distances, especially if you have children or disabled people with you as well. You have to, the way that you lay them out is particularly important. A lot of thought went into where I put my caches, and it's true what Chef's Tech's saying about the direction of travel. You know, if you have 2, 3, 4 caches all going north, but the big thing you're trying to get away from is in the north, well, you're going the wrong way. And so a better thing to do would be to have, one north, one south, and then when you get another cache, put one north, another one south, and you do it that way. Or maybe you can do it like a circle. Maybe you live in the center of a country and you have 4 caches. You put one north, east, south, and west. That at least gives you the ability to travel in any direction depending on what it is you're trying to move away from. You can always move to the next one. You don't have to move in a straight line. You can start in the south and then move west to your next cache, and so on. I mean, there's lots of techniques in place for where to put these caches.
You don't want to put each one a day's walk away.
Exactly.
Because if you don't have at the first one, you now have a whole other day to walk with nothing. And if you got friends, family, children, whatever with you, you're screwed. It's like, oh, sorry, kids, food's gone. We have another day to do this, and you have no energy left.
I'd be more concerned. I'd be more concerned about the water. Food, a day or 2 is one thing, but water, that might be more of a.
Well, that's where you keep your cache somewhere near where there's a water source.
Tablets or whatever, or something along the lines of that, or a filter or something like that.
Well, the water depends on where you are. I mean,
you carry a small filter thing with you, period, so you can filter water wherever you are at. In case you can't get to your food, at least you have water, because we know that. What is it, the 666 or 888, whatever, oxygen, water, food. Yeah.
By the way, everyone, I got like 5 minutes.
That's all right. By the way, it's 6 o'clock or my whatever. 4 hours has passed very quick. So I think Jaren's
and it's midnight here.
Everybody's pretty much done at this point.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to wrap things up anyway. So,
hey, Alan, if you could stay on for a second.
Sure.
Yeah, maybe I will for 5.
No, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to Alan.
Okay. We're okay. I'll just close.
We got plenty of time. Not today, but
thanks for having me on, Shadow. That was a really good conversation tonight.
Sure.
This was really interesting.
Yeah. More to think about.
Always something to think about.
Tap the information.
Hey, Mike.
All right, the real love. You have a good day. Hey, Mike. Wherever you are on the road with your bicycle right now, struggling in the sunshine.
Well, thanks for stopping by, everyone. It was really nice to see you guys again. And I will see you guys next week, I hope. Same time, same channel. And remember, be part of the solution, not the problem.
Have a good night.
Have a
Take
good
care, everyone.
night and a good day. God bless.